Indinami, me phone.
But I'm watching you. Aha, yeah, that's the same.
I just said good morning.
Let's say what started. It's a cry, the Cassia Bonoba film. What you see?
Okay, you church your munina. Good morning, guys. I hope your weekend was great and fun and relaxing.
You should be asking me that too.
Productive. How was your weekend?
It was a working weekend.
Oh, okay.
Throughout.
I don't envy you.
But yesterday, it ended on a good note as I went to see In the Pants of a Woman at the National Theatre.
Good for you.
Yeah, it's actually a very good piece by Kobenansa, and I feel, I don't know, there should be, repeats and all of that, because it also focuses on the media and our role in protecting people who suffer rape or some form of sexual abuse. Yeah, it's a good one. You missed.
Why didn't you invite me, Ben?
They came on the show,
but I didn't get to
gave out complimentary tickets. And
how did I miss that?
You did.
You see what Ben does to me on the show? Anyway, guys, it's a beautiful Monday morning. I like Mondays because I'm a Monday born, Ajo. And in a bit, I'll be serving you the news. And then after that, we'll get into the news review, like we always do. But for today, Suleimana Brahima, the Executive Director of Media Foundation for West Africa, will be joining us for that segment. And right after that, Mufta Nabil Abdullahi will be here to bring you the latest updates in the world of sports.
Well, from there, we also get into some interesting conversations this morning, starting off with the Alliance for Revolutionary Change. I'm talking about Alan Chemating, and his cohort, Abu Sakara Foster, has joined him. And then there are other groupings, 9 of them, banding together to create that force. Do we know the third force? Maybe. We're not sure, but they're coming together to create an electoral storm come election 2024. We'll be investigating which forces are coming together, what really they can do by way of power, and what exactly our expectations should be from the Alliance for Revolutionary Change. We'll be telling you about that later on the show.
But that's not the end of that conversation. After that, we'll get into an analysis of the tussle between the PURC and the ECG to hefty fines on the ECG board members, the fixing of transformers, the installation of the AmeriPower plant in Ahomaso, in Kumasi, in the Ashanti region. Will Ghana's power crisis ever end? We'll engage the Executive Director of the African Center for Energy Policy, Ben Boachi, to give us all the details that we need to make this very clear for all of us. So join us with your comments.
Indeed, we'd love to hear from ordinary Ghanaians, especially on the PURC, ECG, and the whole bit about, let's put all of them together. Put them together. It's like a pot of soup. Nam kakrawaha.
I'm shaking my head because this weekend, them take do me.
Oh, they take do you, eh? Oh, yeah.
Them take do me.
I mean, if no, it go reach everybody.
All right, let's get into that conversation. Okay, let's get into the news now. Welcome aboard the AM show. Welcome to the program. This is the AM News. Let's get into the details. The National Peace Council is urging religious leaders to desist from using unsavory comments with the potential of inciting electoral violence as the country prepares for general elections in December. Chairman of the Council, Reverend Dr. Ernest Edujemfi, emphasized the charge bestowed on ministers of the church to protect the peace and stability of the country. Speaking at this year's Ministers' Conference of the Ghana Baptist Church, Reverend Dr. Edujemfi charged church leaders to harness their platforms to encourage cohesion among members of the Christian fraternity. There's more in this report.
The 61st Annual Refresher Course, Retreat and Business of the Ghana Baptist Ministers' Conference was held on the theme Ministerial Ethics, Accountability and Responsibility in the 21st Century Church. Speaking on the theme, Chairman of the National Peace Council, Reverend Dr. Ernest Edujemfi, emphasized on the crucial role of the church in nation building. As the general election beckons, he noted the responsibility of the clergy in promoting peace and refraining from spiteful comments.
Every minister of the gospel will understand that we have a responsibility to protect the peace, stability, and unity of our country. that whatever we do in this country, we must ensure that we maintain the peace, the stability, and the cohesion of our country.
A nation predominated by Christians, the Christian fraternity has been admonished to remain disciplined in the discharge of their duties. President of the Ghana Baptist Ministers Conference, Reverend Dr. Charles Owusu-Ampofo, charged political leaders and the government to uphold the statutes of truthfulness and accountability.
We model our political leaders, those who make decisions for our nation. And so we preach to them, we send them messages. When things are not good, we do send messages. Sometimes in occasions like this, we speak to them through this media for them to know that Ghana belongs to all of us.
Adding to calls for a peaceful election, guest speaker at the event, Irene Toshi Adolate, admonished actors in the elections to consider a collective win for the country through circumspection.
Pastors, men of God, politicians and everybody, we must conduct ourselves in a way to save the country and not to break the country.
For Joy News, my name is Emmanuel Bright Kweko.
Meanwhile, former Minority Leader in Parliament, Haruna Idrisu, has averred that the National Democratic Congress will win 2024 general election because the party stands on the side of morality, truth, and above all, a proven track record of the party and its flag bearer, John Dramani Mahama. In addition, he said the NDC is determined to win all 11 parliamentary seats in the Upper West region. The Tamale South Legislature made the statement at the capacity building workshop for NDC party communicators in the region. Joy News Upper West regional correspondent Rafiq Salam reports from Waa.
The former minority leader in parliament, Haruna Idrisu, averred that the National Democratic Congress (NDC), led by former President John Dramani Mahama, is on course to being returned to power based on the following reasons.
Because we stand on the side of morality, we stand strong on the side of truth, and we are proud of our legacy as a party and government in the past, with President John Dramani Mahama as fourth president of the Fourth Republic and our candidate for the 2024 presidential and parliamentary election.
Haruna Idrisu opined that the NDC is poised to capturing all 11 parliamentary seats in the Upper West region, starting from the Lambuse constituency, which is said has already fallen to the NDC, with the London constituency next on the line. The NDC currently holds 8 out of the 11 parliamentary seats in the Upper West region.
We are determined to capture all the 11 seats in the Upper West region, at least from my briefing and from information available to me. Lambose is already in the basket. We can add that on, and we are narrowing on to strategy to get Nandom in, and we are determined to win all 11 seats, and then also in the Sisala area. Myself have been playing some quiet diplomatic role, reconciling the previous Sisala candidate with the NDC candidate, and they are working together now, as you can see on the ground. And we are quite satisfied with the performance of the NDC in the Upper West region. At least we didn't borrow as recklessly as they have. 600 billion against 120 billion, a debt to GDP which is unprecedented. So Nana Addo Dankwa and Dr. Bawumia have only moved Ghana from Ghana beyond aid to Ghana beyond borrowing. You know that they can't borrow again themselves, and they are making it impossible for the country to rely on external borrowing to finance budget and to deal with deficit. And we are aware that President John Dramani Mahama will inherit a problematic economy to manage, and effort will be to stabilize the economy and back on major constitutional and administrative reforms that strengthen institutions of Ghana, and more importantly, determine what the future of the country would be. The Upper West region, as you all know, is my second home. We are always proud of their sacrifices and contribution to the NDC, and at least it's on the walls that you can see that the NDC will do better and super in the 2024 elections.
The Tamale South Legislature then goes after the juggler of Vice President and flag bearer of the new Patriotic Party, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, stating that he will suffer to remove the attack of being a habitual lying politician and also the linking himself from the failures of the MPP government.
As for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, he will suffer from a credibility problem as a habitual lying politician. You just make promises. You don't do that. You must have honor when you make promises and you can't honor them. You apologize to the Ghanaian people, or you hold strong in saying that I take responsibility. He cannot be claiming now to be dissociating himself from the Nana Danko government and their performance or achievement. If he doesn't want to share their failings, he shouldn't share their success. God bless.
Also present was the National Communications Officer of the NDC, Sami Jemfi, who donated 11 motorbikes to the party on behalf of the 2024 flag bearer of the NDC, John Dramani Mahama, for onward distribution to the 11 communications bureau in the region. Sami Jemfi chastised the MPP for failing to deliver on promises made to Ghanaians.
The ruling MPP government has flattered to deceive on all their major promises. They have betrayed the trust of Ghanaians and they have violated their social contract with the people of Ghana. And it is the reason why Ghanaians are all suffering, irrespective of one political affiliation. And so all Ghanaians are united in grief, calling for change in the direction of this country. And who better to give us that change than a man who has been tried and tested, the visionary nation builder, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, who has a proven track record and the vision that can bring about the transformation and the prosperity we are all yearning for.
Reporting for Joy News, Rafik Salam.
Now, still on the Northern Belt, the head of Department, Media and Communication Studies at the Tamale Technical University, Dr. Jacob Abudu, has indicated that social media has become extremely powerful as against the traditional media, making it a tool to spread information very fast. He said because of how it can spread information very fast, there is the need for all to be cautious in its use to spread information, especially ahead of December polls. Dr. Abudu said this at a forum to discuss disinformation and misinformation and how they affect the peace and security of the Northern region.
The forum brought together media experts, the security, people with disabilities, youth wings of the various political parties and civil society organizations to deliberate about countering misinformation and disinformation for peace, security, and development in Ghana. Speaking on the sidelines of the event, Dr. Jacob Abudu said if the country wants to ensure its peace, then there is the need to fact-check information.
In the political season, and the propaganda wings of the political parties will definitely churn out information that are not true, that is deliberate. That is one. And secondly, we also have misinformation. Misinformation is also fake news, news that is not true, but the difference is that that is not deliberate. I've indicated that the social media platforms or digital media has become extremely powerful these days as against the traditional media, and information is quickly churned out on social media. So the point is that what role would the media play? And what role should individuals play relative to the misinformation and disinformation if we want to keep peace and security within our country? I am saying the first thing that we need to do is to fact check the information that's been channeled. Is it true? Is it not true? We need to check before we as it were, take it in. For those who use social media, they have to be pretty careful. It's not every information that comes that you have to, as it were, forward it to some other persons. Check, is it true? If it's not true, don't do it. If you do it, that is going to be very dangerous.
Team lead of Kongita, Reverend Father Dr. Clement Ampenlongmean, said when it comes to countering misinformation and disinformation, it is a shared responsibility.
And we are saying that when it comes to countering misinformation and disinformation, it's a shared responsibility. We are all together in this. Today we have looked at the role of the media and the role of civil society, in countering misinformation and disinformation. And we're looking at how can we create education and awareness, how can we create systems, context-specific systems that allow us to fact-check this information. But above all, we are asking each one to make the effort. If you are not sure about information, don't pass it on. Because
Executive Director of the Savannah Signatures, Dr. Stephen Agbenyo, said they are worried that technology is being used as a tool to propagate misinformation.
We want to ensure that everyone in our society have access to tools that they can leverage on to be able to thrive in their various communities. And we believe that this is a crucial year, election year, and as an organization that is also primarily focused on leveraging on technology, we are worried that technology is also being used as a tool for propagating misinformation and disinformation. That is one. The second reason is that we are worried that the people that will work in, the environment that will work in, if misinformation and disinformation is not checked this year, it may impact on the lives and livelihoods of people. It is as a result of these tools, technology, and the fact that we need to create an enabling environment for our communities to thrive, that we are pumping resources into having a session such as this.
Again, from the Northern Belt, 1 million livestock across 5 regions in the Northern region have been targeted for vaccination against anthrax disease. This project has been spearheaded by USAID in collaboration with Central Veterinary Laboratory in Pong, Tamale. These organizations say they are fighting the disease head-on after it caused the death of several animals and more than 10 people last year. Martina Bugri has more in the following report.
The United States Agency for International Development and the Ghana government have launched the first mass anthrax vaccination campaign in the northern region. To help ensure the success of the campaign, the USAID donated 100,000 doses of the anthrax vaccines to support the campaign. Last year, Ghana experienced an outbreak of anthrax affecting 6 districts in the Upper East region, whilst a total of over 100 animals died as a result. About 13 human anthrax cases were also detected, including 1 death. Speaking at the launch of the campaign in Saviligu, the mission director of the USAID, Kimberly Rosin, urged government and other development partners to sustain the campaign to ensure its success.
Anthrax outbreak here in the Upper East region that killed 1 person and killed 97 animals. So thankfully, again, to the quick action to the government of Ghana and other partners, including us at USAID, we were able to contain the outbreak and minimize the loss of life. These unfortunate and avoidable deaths and infections remind us of the importance of regular vaccine campaigns.
The Deputy Director of Veterinary Service Department, Dr. Benita Anderson, who spoke on behalf of the Chief Veterinary Officer, said anthrax is not only posing a grave risk to animals but also to humans.
Today marks a significant milestone in the ongoing efforts to safeguard the health and well-being of our livestock and communities. But today, we stand united in our resolve to confront this threat head-on.
The Food and Agriculture Organization's representative to Ghana, Benjamin Ejay, expressed worry over the periodic occurrence of the anthrax disease in the country.
Yes, unfortunate but very disturbing that anthrax vaccines are produced under our nose here. Yet, anthrax periodically occurs in the north, impacting heavily on both human and animal lives and disrupting economic activities along the livestock value chain.
In other stories, the Minister for Roads and Highways, Francis Asensio-Boakye, has reiterated government's commitment towards improving the deplorable road networks across the Bono East Enclave. The minister, who was speaking during this maiden tour of the area, Anasabit, has more in this report.
The Minister for Roads and Highways, Francis Asensio-Boakye, has reiterated government's commitment towards improving the status of the various road networks across the Bono East Enclave. The minister, who was on a tour of the region to assess the state of the road network in the area, began with an inspection of the abandoned Techiman-Boyam road network, which was started in the year 2015, where he noted that the road network remained a priority to government.
I started from Techiman North in a beautiful stony town called Boyam, and moved from there to Asoyi. This is a very important town in the Techiman traditional area where the people are calling for their road to be constructed.
The team then went through the Nkranza North district before ending on the famous Atebubu Kwame Danso stretch, which was awarded to contract by the Nanado-led government before the 2020 elections, before being abandoned by the contractor a few months after the polls, leaving the stretch into a sorry state. Mr. Asensubuachi said the Atebubu Kwame Danso stretch continued to be a priority to government as it facilitates the transportation of farm produce from the eastern part of the region to other parts of the country.
From there, we came to Atebubu, and from Atebubu, we've come all the way through Kwame Danso to Juan. This is a very important area. It's a booming farming community. Sugar cane plantation and vegetable farming in this area.
Abdurrahim Mahama is the project manager for Jasmo Construction, who are in charge of the Atebubu Kwame Danso Road. He says the delay in the completion of the project is as a result of financial constraints and asks that soon the contractors will be on site to continue with its work.
The project starts from Atebubu to it ends at Kwame Danso, and it's about 35 kilometers. Currently, we've done about 10 kilometers of primary civil, which we are left about 20 kilometers of earthworks and ceiling. It's because of financial or cash flows, we were having challenges. So that's why you are seeing parts being deteriorated.
Also part of the minister's tour is the Deputy Roads Minister, Stephen Jelula, who doubles as the Member of Parliament for Pro West constituency, which is also in the Bono East region. Anna Sabit, Joy News, Atebubu.
Moving on, Joy News Erastus Asare Donko, Father Campbell, former Speaker of Parliament, were among national achievers given a maiden distinguished award by the Full Gospel Businessmen Fellowship in Accra. Joy News' Erastus Asare Donko received a distinguished honor for the fight against illegal mining and environmental sustainability. At the maiden distinguished award series organized by the Full Gospel Businessmen Fellowship in Accra, Erastus received the honor for his exemplary role in the fight against illegal mining in parts of the country. He has assured that such recognition will spur him on to intensify the fight. He also used the opportunity to invite other key stakeholders to join the fight. Here's more from the awards ceremony.
And the award goes to Mr. Erastus Asare Donko.
Mr. Erastus Asare Donko.
The Full Gospel Businessmen Fellowship International, established many decades ago, has introduced a new award scheme known as the Footprint Awards. This initiative aims to recognize both members and non-members who have made significant contributions to society, leaving a lasting impact on generations. Under the theme of recognizing excellence and integrity, the organization seeks to highlight the positive influence and exemplary lives of the awardees for the benefit of future generations. Joy News' Erastus Asare Donko was among the distinguished individuals honored with an award for his unwavering commitment to combating illegal mining and advocating for environmental sustainability. In an interview, he expressed gratitude for the recognition, viewing it as a motivating force in his campaign.
Every major river or stream is highly poisoned with heavy metals from irresponsible mining. I think it should be an emergency for the whole country, but unfortunately it's not. It's not even getting #1 spot with regards to media attention in the country. And so awards like this tell you that do not give up. It tells you that we are the last frontier and we should not give up. We should still keep on doing it, what we are doing. We should amplify the voices. But I'm using this opportunity to invite all media houses, all journalists, that this It's about our existence.
Addressing the members, President Francis Owusu emphasized the importance of such honors in shaping societal values and aspirations.
The Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship International was established over 70 years ago in California, the United States of America, and now exists in over 90 nations around the world. This fellowship has made great impacts in these nations by transforming the lives of countless people, using God's power in our testimonies. We are gathered to give honor where honor is due, because it is important that we honor people, and God is pleased with it. Therefore, I want to thank you all and thank the leadership for inviting my wife and I, the International Ladies Coordinator, Jennifer, who's here with me, to be part of this celebration.
Among the other notable award recipients of the evening were Reverend Father Campbell, former Speaker of Parliament Professor Aaron Michael Quay, and the current Speaker of Parliament Alban Bagbin.
And lastly, for this bulletin, the seat of government on Saturday moved to the Akan constituency in the Oti region to formally mourn the late Ghana's High Commissioner to Nigeria, Rashid Bawa. The president and his vice were in attendance to remember the late diplomat and console the family. Correspondent Peter Senu has more in the following report.
The news of the passing of the diplomat reached the constituency on the 14th of March 2024. On the 15th of March, he was laid to rest at his residence at Kejebi, according to Islamic traditions and belief. Full government machinery moved to the constituency to officially mourn with the family on Saturday. This is what the Vice President has to say to the family.
We want to pray for our mother and ask that Allah gives her the patience and the strength to bear this loss. It's a big loss. We are all the children. We are all going to be there to support her.
Yahya Bawa is the eldest of the Bawers and spoke on behalf of the family.
It is indeed a great honor to receive the guests that represents the government of the Republic of Ghana.
The Vice President later signed the Book of Condolence before moving to the funeral grounds. Former party chairman Freddie Blake eulogized the late ambassador and commissioner.
We're very good friends. He was almost every day in my house, or I was in his house. Honestly, until he went to Nigeria, we were almost on a daily basis seeing each other. It's a pity he's dead. Today, we are mourning him.
To them, and very devastating.
To say our family is devastated with the loss of Rashid is a complete understatement. We are shattered and depressed. Rashidi was notably brilliant, an uncommon scholar, and an intellectual. He was a mentor and still serves as a major inspirer to the youth in KJB and beyond. It is therefore not surprising that the youth continuously agitated for his comeback to lead the community once again in Parliament.
For the children, he was such a fun daddy to be with and with a high sense of discipline.
We have come to acknowledge his painful exit from our lives. We have lost a leader, a father, a personal confidant, coach, and a best friend.
The political jostling to replace him has heightened, with two party members declaring their intentions to replace him. We bring you more in subsequent bulletins. Peter Senu for Joy News.
And that's how we are wrapping up for the AM News on the AM Show. Suleiman Abraima is our guest for the news review. You want to stick with us. I just want to say before Benjamin comes in, he woke up at the very mischievous side of his bed this morning. So everybody watch out. Good morning.
Wait, what's she talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about.
On the AM show. And my guest today is Benjamin Akakpo. And
it's very good to be here.
Joining us.
It's very good to be here. Thank you for hosting me. This is a lovely studio. Yeah. You know, I enjoy this place.
So Benjamin, before we get into the newspapers,
right.
Not a topical issue.
Right.
Let's take it down a notch. I'd like you to speak to something either in the creative arts or in the entertainment industry that you want to respond to or react to. Not
creative
political.
Industry.
Yeah. What's happening in this country?
Well, our creatives aren't being creative enough.
Okay.
I said it. Some people are not going to be happy about it.
Yeah.
But I told you yesterday I went to see a play. And I love, people like me who are very, sometimes I don't like calling myself creative. I write, I do poetry and prose, verse. Exactly. And I'm a polyglot as well. So I have a lot to play with. But I feel, creatives in society, when there are burning issues, creatives find ways of expressing those issues through their art. I'm talking of theater, I'm talking of prose, verse, stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, KSM has had the space and done back then, the saga of the returnee and all of that. What was the lady's name? I've forgotten.
You finish.
And nowadays, we don't have that. These stand-up comedians are making a lot of fun about... You remember General Ntatia's one from way back? And there's not enough of that. And you see, that serves a purpose in any... The French are very brutal with that, cynical. They have a certain vibe. You may say some of these cartoonists and all that get them right. But the creatives, especially in music and writing and plays, stage plays, I don't feel we're doing enough. The reverse of that is that it also serves the purpose of lightening the mood of people.
Especially
in spite of the burdens.
In this economy.
You
should be able to mirror the issues, critique it without making us feel that indeed this is all that we've got. You understand what I'm saying? But welcome aboard the news review segment. And Benjamin is not my guest.
Right before we bring in Suleimana, though, let me just... let you know that Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, as always, is helping us bring you this segment. They're offering you, if you're a man, prostate screening for free. If you're a woman, fertility screening for free. Just make your way, make a beeline to any of their branches. Now in Accra, they are at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. Then there's Kumasi, Kronum, Abuehia behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrady Anaji Estate. There's Temma Community 22. There's Techiman Hanswa and Esiama Nzema. Oh, you want to call them? There are two numbers. 1, 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But just the start of the news review, would you like to bring in Suleimana Brahima?
Oh, go ahead.
All right. So Suleimana Brahima, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. He joins us. We are robbing you of sleep, sir. I can see from your face, just as mine, that we are robbing you of sleep. Fachaye, why? Good morning. You'd have to unmute.
Yes. Good morning, Ben. Thank you for having me. It's a great day.
Great. I'm here with Sweetie Abochi. Let's get into it, as we always do. About 2 minutes max to vent on something topical. But if you can, you know that the SML situation is out there. Also something that the Fourth Estate worked on. President Akufo-Addo is still yet to release that KPMG report. I don't know what your take is on that. And in fact, now there is that summons, if you like, for Manasseh Azure Awene to appear before court. And remember back in the day, appear on the paper, people would to appear before court and testify. You could add that to your take if you care to.
Well, Ben, I think naturally at this stage, everyone is concerned about the state of our power sector, especially the ongoing power crisis, as we call it, doomsday. I think a lot of people are quite angry, and legitimately so. And the anger for me is perhaps less of the fact that there is power outage from time to time, but more about the fact that the government is arrogantly refusing to publish the timetable that will guide people to plan their lives. Because, I mean, it's not the best, but it's at least manageable if you know that this morning as I head to the office, there would not be power. And so I have to plan this way or that way. Or when I'm getting back to the house in the evening, there's no power, and I need to plan this way or that way. So it's really unfortunate that the government is refusing to do that. And from all indications, it's just about the embarrassment from how they've been talking about we've ended Dumsor, even though we all do know that by the time the NPP was coming to power in 2017, the power crisis had actually been ended, and that is a fact. And so making claims about we've ended Dumsor, and getting us back into Dumsor is perhaps, I think, what their problem is. But as I said, it is not for the government to announce that there is Dumsor before people know there is Dumsor. I mean, everyone knows that there is Dumsor. What people are complaining about now is, please, let's have the timetable. And I think that is something that we'll all urge the government to do. On SML, as you do know, they've gone to court against Manasseh Azure Awini. Manasseh had been out of town since July or August last year for a fellowship, a name-on fellowship at the Harvard University, so he's not in town. I hear that some substituted service procedures have been commenced. Well, we look forward to what will happen. When we're getting into this business of investigative journalism through the Fourth Estate Project, we knew that it was not going to be easy, particularly at a time when the environment for press freedom is retrogressing. We knew it's not going to be easy, but we are prepared for it. We look forward to President Akufo-Addo releasing the KPMG report. It was initially 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks, there was an extension granted. We got a press release that communicated a definitive timeline. It's been over, and we're still waiting. So, well, all we can say is that we are waiting for the president to let us know what the findings are.
But are you concerned that this long after, and that's my final bit to you so we get into the paper, Sweetie will do that. Are you concerned that this long after a report like this, because Ghanaians were waiting with bated breath just to get the report, then the report comes through and it's taking this long? Are you concerned? And what are your, what is your thought process on the delay?
You see, to be honest with you, I don't think that the president wasn't aware about the KPMG contract in the first place. I think the nature of the contract...
you mean the SML contract?
Yes, exactly.
All right. You said KPMG. That's why I wanted to...
Sorry, I mean, the SML contract. I don't think that it was a contract that the president wouldn't have been aware, given the amount of monies involved and given the scope of the contract and the fact that this was between GRA, Finance Ministry, and SML. And so it was quite curious that the president would now say, okay, we're commissioning an audit, and it went to KPMG. Right from the beginning, people said, okay, we look up to KPMG to do the needful, given instances where KPMG has been fined in relation to government audits of this nature around the world. And so it's quite curious that we are told that the report has been submitted and it is taking this long for the president to let us know what's in the report. For me, getting people to begin to wonder, is it that the report is quite indicting and the president doesn't know how to communicate that? Or are they trying to do something about the report? If not, I mean, audit report is audit report. Just put it out there and let us all see. But given the time it is taking this time around, even if it is published today or tomorrow, people will begin to question what kept it delaying. Why were they keeping the report? Were they doing some amendments or whatever it is? But hey, we are in Ghana. Nowadays, anything goes. So let's be patient and look forward to what the president would eventually do about the reports.
Right. So we have limited time. We're going to make the most of it, about 25 minutes.
We have to rush through it. So what I'll do is I'll read the headlines on the front page, do some quick stories, and then I'll come back to you for your reactions before we move on to the next paper. Starting from the Daily Guide newspaper. On the front page, ECG board fights PULC over 5.8 million Ghana cedi fine. 3 killed in gas explosion. TUC descends on Professor Adai. Interesting. NPP youth wing shakes Ashanti. Leave Bawumia alone. Veep chasers told. Let's start with this story, obviously, because it's the biggest story in the country right now. It's on all the major pages of all the newspapers. ECG board fights PULC over the 5.8 million Ghana cedi fine. Members of the Board of Electricity Company of Ghana have rejected the 5.8 million fine imposed on them by the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission over a failure to provide strategic direction for the running of the company. The board, in a letter issued by their legal representative, contend that they are not responsible for the day-to-day operation of ECG, hence could not legally be held accountable for any infractions. That's the story there. I'm sure we're all familiar with it. I'll do Dr. Bawumia's Veep chasers told to leave Bawumia alone. People who have been knocking on the door of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the New Patriotic Party flag bearer, to select their favorite candidate as his running mate, have been told to back off. According to a group calling itself the Patriotic Movement for Bawumia, its leadership has been aware that some people have been publicly and persistently putting pressure on Dr. Bawumia by sending various delegations to him with the goal of imposing their preferences on him. Addressing the media, the group's spokesperson, James Agri Fifieshen, who is the second vice chairman for the Ofori-Krum constituency, stated that Bawumia, as a man of his own vision, knows what is best for him and will select the most suitable person as his running mate. My question is, why is it taking so long? I'll do one last story. TUC descends on Professor Adai, and then we'll come back to you. This story is on page 6. It says the Trades Union Congress has lashed out at Professor Stephen Adai following the latter's scathing remarks about Ghanaian workers. The TUC, in what appeared like rapid blows on the image of Professor, told him that it comes as no surprise that the president had been swift in sacking you out of the state institutions he appointed you. That's his words. Continuing, the TUC told the prof that TUC and organized labor will no longer sit down for you to continue the unwarranted attacks on the Ghanaian. So for context, Professor Stephen Adai was saying that Togolese workers are more productive than Ghanaians, that Ghanaian workers don't work hard enough. But these 3 quick stories, your reactions?
You know, he's actually shared something with me like that before. He talks about the artisans.
Yeah.
You know, plumbers, bricklayers, and others who come into the system, and that technically they do better, they are more committed, they are more honest, and they charge less. Now, I can understand why the TUC is taking him on, but do you know what's interesting? What? It's not just Professor Adai who thinks this way. A lot of people do. So while you cannot say that, oh, Ghanaian artisans are not good, no, that's not a fair comment to make. But at the same time, some of them are not so honest. Others are honest. But you should also look at the other side. While some may bash him, what is the reality on the ground? I know places where you will go and they will tell you, we prefer the artisans from Togo. So how about that? It's a middle ground game. My thoughts.
Benjamin, all the major issues we have in this country can be fixed if Ghanaians, or the moral compass of Ghanaians, are facing right.
People are just not honest about
whether it's ethical or morality. I mean, talk of education, corruption, power. If people can just be honest and discharge their duties diligently, most of our issues will be fixed. So I don't know. Well, let's go to Suleiman Abrahima for his reactions, and then we'll move on.
Well, let me start with an endorsement of your concluding statements in terms of the morality, the values, the ethics, and all of that. I think that we are at a point where we have to accept the facts as they are. I don't think that as a nation, our future, if we go the way we are going, I don't think that we are building a future that will be more prosperous than we have had now or we have had in the past. Because, look, increasingly everyone wants shortcuts. Everyone wants money quickly. Either people are venturing into politics because that is where, if you are lucky and your party comes to power and you get some position, or even if you don't get some position, through influence peddling, you can make it quite quickly. People are getting into religion, whether in Christianity or Islam. It's where places where people feel you can make money quickly. you employ someone and the person feels like they want to play smart and make money. All they care about is making money, not about delivering the work or helping to build whatever institution or business that they have been employed in. That, for me, is the reality. I mean, the TUC, yes, I agree, they can disagree, they can rant, they can accuse, they can blame, but perhaps it goes back to what President Kufuor said some time ago, that people are pretending to work and government is pretending to pay. The truth of the matter also is that salaries in this country is nothing to write home about. And for that matter, people will do all manner of things to try and make ends meet. But that doesn't serve as a legitimate excuse. The point about the Togolese artisans versus the Ghanaian artisans, well, we all do share those sentiments, but sometimes I believe if the Ghanaian travels to Togo or Benin, knowing that I'm here to try to make money back home, their attitude and everything can be quite different. And so that's what I would say on that. ECG versus PURC, I think that it's good to see a state regulator decide to take on a state institution. The legalese, I've heard people talk about the legal arguments, whether the board could be fined, whether the PURC has the mandate to be able to impose a fine as they have done. Well, as a non-lawyer, I wouldn't want to go into that. But for me, it's quite heartwarming to see a state regulator trying to ensure that the rules of the game are enforced. Whether or not they can impose that sanction legally or that fine legally, at least it sends a certain message. And again, back to the whole issue about why is ECG and the players in that sector refusing to treat Ghanaians fairly, refusing to treat Ghanaians respectfully. For me, that is the point. I think that the whole thing started with PURC demanding that ECG must publish a Dumsor timetable, and ECG recalcitrantly decided not to oblige. And then it followed up with all this imposition of fine on the board and so on and so forth. I think ECG should just do the needful. Let Ghanaians know when they have power and when they don't have power. And that will be the end of it. But I would commend the PURC, at least for trying to do what they were set up to do as a regulator.
Right.
On running mate business, I think that the flag bearer of the MPP knows what's right for him and the party. I'm sure that at the right time he would announce who the running mate is. It is also, for me, not out of place to see people lobbying, to see people pushing for their preferred candidates. I think that is normal, that is politics. And I don't agree with the notion that, it's taking too long and all of that. At the end of the day, I think he knows what's best for him and what's best for the party for the upcoming elections. Right. And it's better for him to take his time to settle on the right person than to rush in the name of just meeting the expectations of people and then ending up telling himself along the line that, if I knew, I would have gone for this person or that person.
All right, so some more quick headlines and then we move to the New Finder newspaper. Tewu gets first female national chairperson. Nudge Hajj visa applicants to sign undertaking. NAPO defends free SHS. Reverend Wegam addresses Baptist Convention conference. Crusaders Against Corruption deny alliance. All these in the Daily Guide newspaper. Now, the New Finder, on the front page, of course, there's ECG's double jeopardy. World Bank, IMF affirm Ghana's economic recovery, according to Dr. Adam. Again, there's a 5.8 million PURC fine, unlawful, says ECG boss. And continue your good works at Housing Ministry, Asantehene tells Kojo Opong and Kroma. Let's do the story on the World Bank, IMF affirm Ghana's economic recovery on page 4, and then I will pass over to Benjamin. So, Minister of Finance, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, has shared promising updates regarding the country's ongoing economic recovery. He underscored Ghana's strides in restoring macroeconomic stability and resilience. The minister reiterated the government's dedication to implementing strategies aimed at sustaining growth and development in the country. He took solace in the fact that both the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank have affirmed Ghana's progress. Benjamin, before we go to Suleiman Ibrahim, How does this story sit with you? Economic recovery, pa.
I think I'll cede to Suleimana to react to that.
Okay. Suleimana.
Well, it's good news, but it's unfortunate for us to get to a point where we now need these external bodies to sort of give us some credibility about our economy. And it's all, for me, started with the government and the managers of our economy not being truthful with the people. When things were bad, we were being told that things were okay. When we all knew, even as non-economists, that our economy had gotten to a point where we necessarily had to resort to a bailout, we were being told, plainly, that there's no way we're going to go to IMF. We are proud people, we are a visionary people, we are a nation that knows what we are about and all of that, until the economy got into coma. And then we had to rush to the IMF. And that is, for me, the reason why here having the IMF say, oh, Ghana is recovering, then it will take our ministry or Minister of Finance to re-echo that to the people of Ghana. Fundamentally, it's not about what the IMF says or what the World Bank says. It's about what the people feel. It's about whether people feel that the economy is improving, whether people feel that, well, their cedis in their pockets can now afford more things, or things are getting worse for them.
Right.
I think that's what's critical, and not what the IMF says or what the World Bank says. If you go back to the IMF staff reports, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2014, and so on and so forth, and you read it all the way down to the current state, you would say, are we being just dribbled? Are we just being made fun of? Because at one point you hear the IMF will praise, another point, oh, Ghana's economy is in dire straits, another point, well, the economy is recovering. We keep hearing this from the IMF all the time. And as many have said, I don't think that it is IMF's benevolence that can build this country. Right. It is our own resilience and truthfulness that can build the country.
Okay.
Well, let's quickly get into some other stories now. The Ghanaian Times newspaper, at inauguration of Ghana Cote d'Ivoire Cocoa Initiative Secretariat, let's deal with challenges in global cocoa price hikes. We are looking at some of the poorest delivery or outturn in cocoa that we've seen in about a decade. Then, Western North, most expensive food region, that's according to the Ghana Statistical Service, and that definitely is a cause for concern. Danger looms at Oyibi, Sasabi, and we'll bring you details of that. Yabua Double powers Legon cities over hearts. Be proud, happy for Olympics. Let's quickly get into the stories. And I'll start with the banner headline and then the one that follows. So, the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has called for stronger collaboration among cocoa-producing countries in Africa to deal with emerging challenges that have been occasioned by the recent hike in global cocoa prices. He said it was imperative for such collaboration to be established to proactively deal with the challenges while reinforcing the need for cohesive action. Adding, such collaboration would address proactively these challenges, reinforcing the need for cohesive action. I do not know, though, how cohesive our action has been, homegrown. Galamsey is destroying our forests. It's not just destroying flora and fauna, it is also destroying water bodies, the source of cocoa. Are you aware that now some people, in trying to maintain their cocoa farms, they have to literally use pure water, sachets of water, or get other sources of water because the water bodies around them are polluted? Of course, that same water seeps into the soil, and then we have what we have, which is also impacting the quality. Ghana's cocoa is premium cocoa globally. Now the standards are falling. The EU and others are saying if you don't deal with the situation, we cannot, So I always say that there's a lot of fancy talk. These are not bad in themselves, but the basics, are we getting them right? The next one I'll do right before you come in is Suleimana. There is, maybe this one, I'll just leave the headline. Gutted Medina market to be reconstructed into 3-story edifice. This bit about markets bursting up in flames and everything, I think I'm sure you're as tired as I am. When I started working here, I covered about 3 to 5 fire incidents. I remember the first one was around Odona. Then I think I went to Kantamanto. There was one that burnt the clothes section. So many of them. Every year you can guarantee that you will have a number of these in especially the Greater Accra region, Ashanti region. I don't know what the thinking is, but I'm tired of these. But the main story I wanted to look at, the second one, Western North most expensive food region. The Western North region is the most expensive region for foodstuffs in the country from January 2023 to February this year. According to the Ghana Statistical Service, reported prices of 10 food items were tracked during the period and ranked them as bread, beans, yam, noodles, cooking oil, tomato paste, milk, beef, iodinated salt, and imported rice, which were the most expensive for consumers. This is very worrying for me. If you look at where the Western North is, and they are suffering this, and you look at the economy, it tells you that there are problems. I don't know, your reactions to these stories, Suleiman Ibrahim.
Well, Ben, thanks. I think, yes, the story from the Western North is quite worrying. And also because not too long ago, Western North happened to be one of, the places where Ghana produced a lot of its food. Again, it's quite worrying because for a long time, the Western North region has been the area where we get a lot of our cocoa from. Those are the Sehri areas. And a lot of people will tell you when you say Sehri, what comes to mind is cocoa. So it's a worrying development, but not surprising because over time, it has also become one of the regions with a lot of galamsey activities. A lot of districts in the Western North region has been under galamsey for quite some time now. And we all know how devastating the effects of galamsey can be. And I believe that if we were to trace this food situation quite carefully, we would have some correlation with the galamsey activities in that area. So it's really a worrying development. And that certainly ties in with the cocoa sector stories. I'm someone who is very passionate when it comes to cocoa issues because I grew up living in cocoa farms. I was brought up, I think for the first 15, 16, 17 years of my life, I was in the cocoa farm villages. My father, has been a cocoa farm caretaker, and so I've done cocoa farming. I've done all the work related to cocoa before. And it's really quite unfortunate that we've gotten to a point, or we've done all this for maybe more than half a century, and cocoa farmers have never gotten better. People living in cocoa growing areas have never been better. They managed to clear their own, feeder roads, and I've done that before in order to allow for cars to come and cut cocoa away. Not too long ago, we heard about the suspension of the development of cocoa roads, and areas where cocoa is grown, you would have some of the worst roads in there. You would have people struggling to survive, people struggling to live, and yet, they are the people who produce the cocoa for us. Maybe within the next few weeks, if not days, we'll be coming up with a story about Cocoa Board. And Ghanaians...
When you say we, are you talking of the Fourth Estate?
Well, these days it's difficult because the Fourth Estate is part of the Media Foundation for West Africa. So whether it's another program or a different project, I have to say we because it all comes under the Media Foundation. Yes, and I mean the Fourth Estate.
Okay.
Right. It's been an ongoing investigations on Cocoa Board, and sometimes how monies, are spent. And you would wonder whether we really care about cocoa farmers in this country. It's a sad situation. And people keep asking, why is it that for almost a century, every year we have to go for cocoa syndication loan to be able to purchase cocoa? Who does business like that? But that is what we are in because, over time, not just under this government, over the period, we've not been serious about our own national affairs. And that's where we are. I believe that we need to get serious. And as I keep repeating, the young people of this country must get serious because it's about the future of this country that is really being destroyed.
Right.
And we need to really get up and defend the future of this country.
Suleimana, from my end, I'm going to run you through the Economy Times very briefly, and then there are 3 issues I want to bring up. You can take stock of them, reflect on them, and maybe give me your thoughts in about 30 seconds on those issues. We have about 3 minutes left. Now, the first is the prevalence of kidney disease, especially among young people. I have heard about 2 cases of people, very young, one under 30, succumbing to kidney disease in recent times. Yes, you can think galamsey and all other things, but what is happening with our eating habits, with exercise regimes and all of that? Too many young people, kidney disease. I don't know what is happening. 2, the train that had the accident and the driver of the vehicle now being given a jail time of 6 months. People say that stretch isn't used. So sometimes people use it. I even hear that in some cases, people sit there and do all kinds of things. Were the right things done, this punishment for the driver? I don't know. And there's this final story, a walk with Jesus. It was discussed. I just want to run it by you, if I can find it. So some churches are nothing more than begging baskets. They don't preach the gospel. It reminds me of, I saw a story about a Nigerian pastor who had asked his congregation to contribute anywhere between $200 and $300 or so he could get a Range Rover. But what will he give them in return? Spiritual. It's spiritual. They get the physical and they give the spiritual back. That was said by Dr. Samuel Tenge. So those are my 3 issues. You can decide which one you want to react to. But in the Economy Times, job availability up by 3.7%. In the country for the first 2 months of 2024 has inched up marginally, according to figures from the Bank of Ghana. That's what they say. Banks tighten credit stances for businesses. Banks have continued to tighten their credit stances to the private sector balance sheet constraints. Weaker capital on the back of private sector balance sheet constraints, weaker capital buffer, and the impact of the domestic debt exchange program. And then Ghana economy to grow 4.4% by end of 2025, IMF says. Those story in the Economy Times. Grab a copy, get the details. That's it for me, Suleimana. Your thoughts, and maybe Sweetie will wrap up.
Well, I think what for me is really critical is this whole issue about kidney disease, as you alluded to. And it's a major problem. I think it comes down to, yes, you talked about our eating habits, our exercising regime and all of that, but increasingly, I think we are losing it. We are losing the regulatory capacity of the food in our system. And then suddenly, over the last maybe 1 decade, we are seeing this gin, that bitters, this, that capsule, and so on and so forth. And it appears that it's anything goes. Not too long ago, if you recall, we did just a little story about how these herbal products are promoted, even in the media. And it's like a free-for-all thing. It's not, the regulations are not working. I think the FDA may have to up its game before maybe we all get ourselves into trouble, because the capacity to even also take care of people with these kinds of conditions is not also the best. Not too long ago, we heard about the crisis in the Kolebu dialysis unit, and not too many hospitals in this country do have a dialysis unit or capacity to perform, to help people with dialysis. So it's a major national issue that we all have to pay attention to. And that is what I would say to that one. I think we need to improve our regulatory capacity when it comes to the food sector. The FDA must do quite a lot more than they are doing now to save all of it.
Thank you so much, Suleimana Brima.
Okay. Well, that's it. I agree with what he was. There are instances where you see 2 products on the market and they both have approved by the FDA, but there are 2 different companies producing the same things. And you're wondering, how does this even...
I think we've seen a bottle...
Lots of them.
Branded, bottled water in recent times. Many problems, but things to look at.
That's it. Let's go.
Well, it's a wrap. Right before we get into sports, though, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic helping us bring you this segment every weekday morning. They're offering you prostate screening for free if you're a man, fertility screening for free if you're a woman. Head to any of their branches here in Accra at Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi Krodoma here behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrady Anaji State, Tema Community 22, Tichiman Hanso and Esiamanzima. You can reach them on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Let's do this.
Okay, say the cue again.
Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. The end to chronic disease. Bringing us to the end of the news review. Sports up next. Manchester United versus Coventry. And there's also Real Madrid versus Barcelona in the El Clasico. We're bringing you lots of that. Do stay.
Which of them?
Accountable, transparent, action-oriented, results-driven, and compassionate. A leadership that will fight corruption ruthlessly and lead by example, and not provide a safe haven for corrupt political appointees and other public officials. Implementing transformational policies.
Change is here to once more rekindle the embers of a dying flame that we saw burning brightly in our first republic. The wings of the butterfly are to breathe air into that the embers of that flame and rekindle it to burn more brightly and show us a new way.
And there you have it, the Alliance for Revolutionary Change. They are bringing on board what they hope will be a change in our electoral system by way of the voting patterns. Now, they mean to make an impact. Leaders of 9 political groupings signing a pact to contest the 2024 general elections under the banner of that coalition they call the Alliance for Revolutionary Change. What are they revolutionizing? What are they changing? Now, this alliance, they say, seeks to end the dominance of the duopoly of the NDC and the MPP in Ghana's politics, which after 32 years of governance has failed to address the fundamental challenges of development and exacerbated hardship in the country. Well, this morning we have a member of that alliance. I am talking about none other than Dr. Abu Sakara Foster of the National Interest Movement, who is now also a member of this alliance. Doc, this is the second time in about 2 weeks, a fortnight, that you have joined me here.
Yes.
I love your batakari, by the way.
Thank you.
So let's go straight for the jugular without mincing words.
Yes.
This happened. The pact has been signed. The last time you came here, you spoke about, maybe another person, another group coming on board. Now we have 9.
Yes.
And how did you manage that?
And there's more to come. I think, first of all, we have found common ground. This is the first time, I think, we have done or put together an alliance based on conviction, not just convenience. It's not just a political convenience. It's a conviction of the framework within which we're working, which has ensured that the interests of all the groups and the things that they are pushing for are all within that framework. And basically, they're all looking for a change. They all want to see fundamental change. They all want to see impediments removed so that we can get better returns for our investment. And more importantly, they want to give hope to the youth of Ghana that something different can happen with the Alliance for Revolutionary Change. So, in addition to that, we have offered a great transformation plan, which will for once look at the integration of the various components that comprise the economy in a way that will build synergy and in a way that will be cost effective. And our approach towards the economy and the management of the economy will be entirely different. We will be borrowing to
And you keep saying that your approach towards managing the economy will be fundamentally different.
Yes,
We've heard these things.
Well,
We've heard these things from the MPP and the NDC. The big talk. Our politicians have not walked that talk.
That is why we've...
And mind you, if I may, I know I'm heckling you, but Alan Chemating, you see, especially from where he comes, Alan Chemating has been a member of not just one, but two administrations.
Yes.
He served under Kufuor. He is serving under Ekufuor. He has served under Ekufuor as a crucial minister, within cabinet. So some people are saying, is this not just another bit about talk, someone who is disgruntled, who wants to find his way back into the political limelight?
I don't think so. I think because, you see, we have to take certain things into consideration. Your capacity can only be optimized within the system that you work. If you do not have the chance to change the system within which you work, you will perform only up to a certain level. And what he has had now is a chance to sit around with other people and change the approach and the system entirely. And when you look into the great transformation plan that has been put up, it is clear that this is going to be different. One, because we are putting a tripod and linking finance, infrastructure, and production areas of growth, particularly led by agriculture, so that we spend in those areas proportionally to what we spend in services. What you have had are two competing governments that have been spending on the services in order to win votes, but not spending as much as they should have in areas to generate income and growth. Secondly, they have not spent proportionally to what they have generated. They have spent disproportionately to what they have generated, and hence the continuing trajectory of the debt profile. So we have to come up with fundamental reforms that ensure that our hands are tied and we don't do those things. That is how it's going to be different. But if you come with a free-for-all approach where you say it is me, I've won, it is my manifesto, I'm going to do it my way, you will end up in the same ditch.
But you see, for example, recently I was speaking to Professor Raymond Atukuba. Yes, there are some issues. Our constitution is very good, but when you look at the Constitutional Review Commission's work, there are things we could tweak. Until that happens, and Prof himself alludes to the fact that because of the political elite, it probably won't happen until maybe the next 50 to 100 years, right? So you talk about these developments, but the reality too is that your hands being tied will continue to be tied constitutionally. Not much is going to change. No, hold on. How are you going to bring these to bear, the tightening of the system and all of that, with the system still the way it is? Is that not, a pipe dream?
No. I think, first of all, the way we are approaching this is that before even getting into government, a great transformation plan has been put together. And if you look at the elements of that, it reflects most of the principles and the fundamental reforms that we should make in order to get us out of where we are. And whilst in government, we will then institute the constitutional changes and policy changes.
But that has already been done. The 2010 Constitutional Review Commission.
No, you haven't done it. You have not yet.
You mean the implementation?
You have
Is that what you're
yet
talking
made
about?
it mandatory for people to follow a national development plan.
No, I just want to get the point.
Yes.
So you are going to give effect to them. Is that what you're saying? What is in the Commission's report?
Yeah, we will ensure that we have a constitutional reform that permits or allows a mandatory national development plan. In other words, you can make your manifesto, but only within the framework of the national development plan and the milestones for that segment of of your tenure of government. So if the national development plan is set out in 5-year phases, there will be clear mileposts that says a developing country like Ghana, where you are now, don't try to jump to the top, talking about going to space. Are you with me? Get your fundamentals right first. Let's have a pervasive reduction in transaction costs by doing our waterway system. This is something every sensible nation that has a waterway system has done, even before it did rail, before it did roads. But we insist on doing roads, to the extent where even you're spending most of your money on just maintaining the roads. Whilst if you invested properly and did the waterway system, if we had a deep sea port between Ada and Keita, and we use barges with locks at Pong and Akosombo, we would have the waterway system more than 450 kilometers.
All these things you're saying, they are not new. A lot of them have been proposed.
Not done it.
But the point I'm trying to make is you keep talking about so that it's mandatory and every 5 years we must achieve this and all of that.
Yes.
Assuming your alliance comes to power, you're not going to be in power forever. Now, you know how our situation has been. You are not the first person talking about we should have the NDPCs. The NDPC is in the Constitution.
It's mandatory.
The NDPC is in the Constitution.
Yes.
The Constitution has stipulations on how the NDPC works.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't talk about a mandatory system where all of this will be done. In other words, what you're saying is that if you're going to implement this mandatory bit, you are going to tweak the Constitution to reflect that.
Of course, this is what I have said. I've said that we will have a constitutional reform that will allow and permit the NDP to be mandatory.
How are you going to actualize that through Parliament, for example?
It is very simple. You go for a referendum, and instead of saying that the NDP a president may implement the NDP, it will say he shall implement it. And the manifestos of political parties, even before they qualify to contest in an election, should reflect the NDP in terms of the stages for that period. And let me finish this. The reason for this is that you will then get the continuity from one regime to the other. You will not get abandoned projects anymore because it will be the same things that we're trying to do.
Right.
And furthermore, you will not get a rapid change in the priority of projects just because somebody made promises and therefore he has to change what is in the interest of the country.
I just wanted to draw your attention to this.
Yes.
I like it when politicians or whatever groupings come and they want to talk about these things from the constitutional standpoint. There are many aspects of our constitution which have shall, obligatory, mandatory, that our leaders do not go by. Are you aware of that?
Of course.
For example, since when did we start doing the State of the Nation addresses and all of that? But they were there.
Look,
from the Kufuor, era, that was when we, all of these, there were so many things there. The president shall, the executive shall, this and that, and they don't do it. So I don't think it is the wording there that is going to change anything.
It goes beyond that, I agree. But if your entire intervention is based on a reform and giving returns to investment for that, and you put your emphasis on making sure those reforms happen, you will then remove the impediments. After all, let us go to this point, which is the point I thought you'd rather bring up. What different interventions have the different governments done that are unique and totally spectacular? They're all the same, building roads, hospitals, schools. Why have they not delivered the returns to investment promised? It is because, essentially, the transaction costs are high. I admit that there's a lot of corruption in the system that is also an impediment. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it is simply that we are not competitive because our transaction costs are high. And the only way you can do that is by ensuring that you have pervasive infrastructure development that reduces the transaction cost by a magnitude. And that is waterway system and rail system. And every country that has developed, are you and me, has done this. So why is it that you think you can get away with it, especially when you've been blessed with a waterway system that you only have to develop, especially when you inherited a colonial railway system that you only had to extend? So we are saying that if we don't get the foundation right, we will keep jumping and jumping to climb the wall, and we won't make it. So let's go back to the table and try and put these things in order.
Let me ask you, though, I mean, looking at the membership, you're looking at Akwesi Odike, you are looking at Bishop Samuel Noy-Mensah of the Ghana First Coalition, Reverend Stephen Ayensu, the Ghana Green Party, Dr. Abu Sakara Foster with the National Interest Movement, Augustina Kujo leading Third Force Movement, among others. And what I found curious in there was the extension of an invitation to the MPP for the launch of this, the very party he led. But let's talk about the different parties coming together, and the pen will flip sometimes. The different parties coming together, or the different groupings. Why these groupings? What do they bring to bear? What refreshing bits do they bring? And is it just not, oh, you are interested, come on board, or you are interested, come aboard? What is the strategy?
Well, you see, before we even invited them, we put together a memorandum of understanding.
Okay, what did they say?
That laid out very clearly the framework within which we would work, and within that framework, what I would say, the central thrust of it was the Great Transformation Plan. But even the Great Transformation Plan has to have a framework within which it works. So once we agreed that, look, we've been having all these interventions, we've not been getting the returns we want. What are the fundamental things that we need to do? We need to make some changes in governance. And those changes in governance must remove specific impediments that we've identified. That will give us the returns on the Great Transformation Plan. Therefore, anybody who is going to subscribe to this alliance must conform or fall in line with that framework. And furthermore, we are looking for people who have diverse interests as well, and who can come together. An alliance is made up of people with different strengths. Some people have strengths in one area, some people have strengths in another area. By coming together, you make a synergy. Ultimately, of course, we must all want to work together to seek a mandate for the executive and the legislative, because that is when you can implement your plans. So it was not simply a matter of just getting people together. In fact, you come and you don't agree, as I can show you, the memorandum here and the signatures. If we have a discussion with you, are you with me? If we see that we're too far apart and you can't sign, then it's better that you don't sign.
Are there such occasions where people have, wanted to come on board, but because of your MOU, they have turned away?
I don't think some people have come and gone with intention to come again, but it was not because of the MOU.
Right.
You know as well as I do that people may have their ambitions, and they want to see whether their ambitions will be fulfilled within this or not. If maybe they feel they still want to be presidential candidates, then they will go and do their own thing. But what we have said from the beginning is that, look, once we've got this framework, we know why alliances don't work. They don't work because everybody wants to be a presidential candidate. Let's get that out of the way first. Let's sit around the table, make some sacrifices. Who at this present time can we build this alliance around? That will get us the furthest. And also, they will perform most creditably. It does not mean that nobody else could have done it. But it means that at this present time, given these circumstances, this is the person who we should all build an alliance around. And we proceeded with that. So that removed the usual struggle, who's going to be the presidential candidate, and then you sit around the table and discuss things and go to Congress, and then after that,
Are you targeting some of the traditional parties as well, especially those with an Nkrumah slant? The CPP, the PNP, the PPP is an offshoot, but maybe them as well. Are you targeting?
We would certainly very seriously look at them coming on board.
When you say very seriously, what do you mean? Are you going to approach them? Are you waiting for them to approach you? What's the approach?
No, I think we have ways and means. You may have had links with some people, and they more respond to you more than me, so you go see them. Are you with me? And that is the beauty of an alliance, that because we are coming from different places, I, for example, I've had links with CPP. I also know the people in PPP, as well as PNC, so I could go talk to them. But there are other people who are closer to PNC than me who could go talk to them. The point is to try and get them to understand what we are doing. This is an alliance of conviction. We have a conviction about what we want to achieve. If you share in that conviction, come on board, and let's look at your capacities and the role that you will best perform within that alliance, so that we have a synergy that makes us all stronger. It's not a case of this is a cake, let's share the positions, and then we all, egos are satisfied and we proceed. The question is, in what role can you best serve this alliance so that together we all achieve what we want to achieve?
Where do you stand in all of this? Are you number 2 in the alliance, second only to Alan Kyerematen? At whatever point in election 2024, you're going to have to come up with a presidential candidate and a running mate. Are you going to be the running mate?
Well, we don't want to put the cart before the horse. First of all, we've launched. We've let everybody know who our presidential candidate is, because usually when you have a new organization, somebody wants to know who is behind it. Now we've also lined up and shown the people, all the people that are involved so far. I believe more will come on board. The next step is to form or to unpack the structure of the alliance, which will have a national steering committee made up of all the leaders that are there, and then an executive secretariat that will facilitate and coordinate its decisions. And that will feed into a campaign, a national campaign structure, because we are not a political party. So it goes straight into a national campaign structure of the various units of specialization within a campaign, media, policy, operations, you name it, and then fall directly into volunteers at the electoral level. Again, because we are not a political party and we are a movement, we're not going to have regional chairman and the constituency chairman.
You may avoid those structures, which technically, and I was going to ask you whether you'd be ready before election 2020.
Oh, yes.
You may not be a political party, you may not need to have those district offices and all of that. The EC, some even fear that with this alliance you're putting together, you could be disqualified by the Electoral Commission. But you say you're not running as a party. What does the Constitution say?
Well, we are supporting an independent candidate.
I see.
And you, as long as you're 40 years old, you meet all the requirements, you're entitled to stand as an independent candidate.
Right.
And you can have anybody in Ghana supporting you.
Actually, our Constitution doesn't say independent. I mean, presidential candidate.
Yeah, independent presidential
candidate. To stand as a presidential candidate.
Independent presidential candidate. So the key word there is independent. And if you're independent, you're not standing on a party ticket.
Right.
Even if we say Alliance for Revolutionary Change, it's not going to appear on the ballot box. It's just going to be Alan Kyerematen and his symbol.
Right.
Yeah. So
but there are still technical angles to be met as far as the Electoral Commission is concerned. Of course, you have to go through the processes of registration, expressing your interest, and all of that.
Yeah.
But you see, there must still be systems on the ground to roll the agenda.
Yeah.
You may not need to have those offices and all of that, but on the ground, you need to be present. The question is, do you have what it takes, the ARC, to get this, tank moving?
I'm glad you asked that question. That is why when you look at the people involved, they have not just come together from nowhere to start a movement. People have been where they are. They have their people on the ground.
You have been there before, flag bearer before.
Yeah, if you go around the country,
been there
people will
before.
come to you and say, well, we have been waiting for you. Everybody has people. Now, the issue is to work within one structure. I know that the Movement for Change already have recruited thousands of people, volunteers, that will work at the electoral area level and polling station level. So our people will join in and link with those people so that we all become one and we work within that framework. And that is what gives us the synergy that maybe individually we could not have. And that is why I keep encouraging all those people who want to stand as independent presidential candidates and haven't got this kind of structure, are you and me, to come on board. Because how long will it take you to do it? It will take you time. And it's like, having a head without legs, So let's get together and pursue this. At any one time, somebody will have to lead. Somebody will have to make sacrifices so we achieve the objective. Who knows? Tomorrow it may be you.
Let's talk about being realistic. Alliances have been formed before in this country. Let's stick to the Fourth Republic, not go outside of it. They have usually collapsed on election day, not led to much. Guzitano, maybe the Grand Coalition was a bit, the MPP and everything in there. But alliances have amounted to nothing on our political terrain. Why do you think this time is going to be any different, especially considering how crucial the election is? Some people feel a lot of angst towards the system currently. And realistically, when they look at options, the duopoly of the NDC MPP comes to mind. Why do you think people would leave considering either the MPP, which is in government, or the NDC, which is supposed to be the option, to look at an alliance like yours? No track record, nothing.
Well, I think the first point is this. If we say that politics proceeds along the linear line, then the current parties would not have been here, would they? Something happened for them to also come.
Right.
And democracy, by its nature, usually delivers two political parties, a duopoly. But those duopolies, those parties have kept changing. When Britain started, was the Labour Party and the Conservatives the dominant parties? No, it was the Liberal Party. What has happened? That they are now the third party. Several years, not so much long ago, the Greens, what were they doing? Just on the high seas, disturbing people in votes. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Now, they have the majority in Parliament. Are you with me? Several. It goes on and on and on. And what I'm telling Ghanaian analysts is that don't be so myopic in looking at your little pond in your little village. That's not how it works. If you look around, by the nature of democracy and the stagnation in duopoly, the democracy becomes less responsive to what the people want.
So here's my take.
As that frustration builds up, you get a fracture, are you with me, in one or two of the dominant parties, and there's a reconfiguration around. So what has happened? Where is Alan from?
Right. And I was just about to ask you that. So is that the strategy? Alan, you can call his emergence an offshoot of the NPP. Politically speaking, if you're a watcher of our political landscape, you realize that it's going to cost the NPP more than it's going to maybe cost the NDC.
Of course.
So is that the strategy? Break down the NPP, whittle away votes, and that is how you create this third force?
The point here is that in any duopoly, when any of the two dominant groups reaches its natural point of fractures, because it is no longer either adhering to its founding principles or it has got internal frictions that cause a lack of cohesion. That is usually the point, a tipping point, at which there is a reconfiguration and another group emerges.
Has the NPP got to that point?
I think that what has happened now is an indication that they've begun on that path.
Because Alan has left the NPP before. This is his second time of departing from the NPP. So I'm asking, do you think at this point, under Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's regime, the NPP, and having selected Dr. Bawumia, the NPP has actually got to that point?
You and I know that I'm not here to discuss NPP anyway. I'm here to discuss Alliance for Revolution. But it's only in the context of the fact that, along our political evolution, some fraction or some fracture has occurred. And that has created a circumstance in which the people who are non-aligned, are you with me, can pick up pieces of that, galvanize themselves around it, and continue. If another fracture occurs in NDC later on, we pick that one as well, and we go. And eventually, you'll see the evolution of a new political group. Rome was not built in a day. But by the same token, I'm telling you that our belief that because these two parties are there, they're going to be there forever and ever, that is obviously a falsehood. It's not the case. Because if you look around the world, that is not what happens. And also, you and I know that many, many people have been frustrated with our democracy and feel it is not delivering. That's because the extreme partisanship has created a situation where people feel, well, they don't have anybody to vote for anyway, they will vote for us. Now, if you used to go and buy a nice shirt in a shop and you kept telling the guy, look, these sizes don't fit, and you have only two shops to buy from, then eventually one small shop opens up and provides you the type of shirt you want. Are you going to say because you've always bought from those two, you won't buy from it? And once you start going there, your friends will start going there. So it is not a static situation. That is the point I'm trying to make. When people look at the political evolution, they see it only at a point in time because the changes take long periods. But maybe we are at the end of that long period.
Maybe we're getting to the end.
Maybe we are at the end.
Okay, maybe we are at the end. Just on a lighter note, though, because of your constant use of fracture, I was thinking maybe National Fracture Party.
Oh no,
but that's just on a
National Revolutionary Party. That's a National Revolutionary Party.
Two quick things I want you to address.
Yes.
How is the Alliance for Revolutionary Change going to address the Hydra-headed problems of the country? But there are two areas I want us to look at. One, Dumso, and two, corruption.
I thought you were going to say Galamsey, but anyway, it's all right.
Galamsey is, if we start the Galamsey conversation, we'll probably not end. We have limited time, so
you see,
Dumso and corruption.
I think the first point is that corruption is a systemic problem. In other words, it's within the system and fabric of governance itself. So if you are going to solve it, you are going to have to take a very different approach to the one we have taken now. I believe that we have to have lifestyle audits, particularly of public officials, and so that we can determine the point at which you acquired all these things from, and you don't pass it through other people and just keep it. So that is going to be something that when we already have somebody who has offered themselves to do those audits for us very nicely. I don't want to mention his name, but if you hear his name, I'm sure you will know that he's quite capable of doing that. Secondly, I think that the information system of learning about corruption has to come from ordinary people. You see, yes, you can have the Office of the Special Prosecutor, but it is only with information from ordinary people who are the implementing end that you get to know the real details and you can prosecute. Other than that, your prosecutions fail more than they succeed. So we have to have a desk that is linked not only to our Ministry of Information, but it's also linked to our National Intelligence System, where anybody in this studio can call and say, oh, Dr. Abu Sakara just left. He has taken 2 of your bottles from Joy FM. Somebody should investigate it and verify it. And if you have that kind of system where information can be given and acted upon, before it is then built in a dossier to give to people who will do the prosecution, I think we'll have more success. And there should not be conflict of interest. It should not be that, oh, we've set up this system, we're going after those guys and not our guys. You know, it should be a fair system that everybody sees that, yes, it is fair. So, and in addition to that, we should also empower our judiciary. You know, we should not put encumbrances in our judiciary. We should ensure that they're operating independently. And part of this has to do also with the way appointments are made. We would want to see that there's greater independence and that there's a system of appointments that the judiciary themselves have a big input into to decide who is appointed to what position, as opposed to the executive sitting there and compromising itself by appointing those that it wants, or perceived, those who are perceived to be those that it wants.
Right.
So I think there's a whole series of interventions that need to be made in order to correct the system. It's a system correction that we need before we can have the returns to investment in implementation.
My final bit to you. What next now for the ARC? What can we expect in the coming weeks, months, maybe even days? What can we expect?
I think we are meeting today. We're going to populate our National Steering Committee. After that, we'll constitute our campaign team, integrate all the people that we now have, and then go down to the grassroots level to also integrate those people at the grassroots level so that we have an army on the ground ready for the election. Of course, we'll be doing the usual campaign things of going around to stakeholders, telling them what our message is, etc., and what they should anticipate. So we'll be campaigning vigorously. I think even in this by-election, we will have a candidate in Ejisu. So,
you will? The ARC will have a candidate in Ejisu?
Well, not
for the by-election?
As an independent candidate.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
We are an independent candidate in Ejisu that we will support. So I think that you'll be hearing more of us.
I see. Well, we hope to do exactly that.
Yes.
And we want to see more of your solutions on nation building,
yes,
including on the NDPC and how you're going to
yes,
conduct this referendum and everything
yes,
in between. But we're grateful for your time. Any final words?
Well, I want to tell the youth of Ghana in particular that this Alliance for Revolutionary Change is the gift from my generation to them.
Okay.
We've come together to put this together as a vehicle that will give voice to them, as a vehicle that will give hope to them. And therefore, they should think very clearly about this, look very carefully at it, and consider it as the only option that they have of building an alternative to the future that faces them now. So we will work together. It's going to be a transition. We'll pass the torch over the same way that our founding father passed the torch to us, to provide us guidance along the way.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abusakara Foster. Joining me, he is with the National Interest Movement and, of course, now a member of the Alliance for Revolutionary Change. They're promising many interesting things. We'll see in the coming days, weeks, and months what exactly they have on offer. But stay with us. Coming up next, we're going to talk energy matters. Yes, there is that tussle between the PRC and the ECG. Yes, there's the issue to do with transformers. Yes, there's the issue to do with the fines. Yes, there's the new Ameri relocated plant to Kumasi, Kumasi 1 thermal plant, among others. All of these we're going to be contemplating with the Executive Director, ASEP. I'm talking about Benjamin Boakye. That and more coming your way on the AM show. You want to stay for that. Welcome back on the AM show. There is Dumso. In the midst of all of that, the Ameri power plant has been changed over, taken to the Ashanti region. It's now the Kumasi 1 thermal plant. Is that going to resolve our problems? In the meantime, there's also that fight, that tussle, that wrestling match between the PURC and the ECG. The president is unhappy with these. Among other things, you've also had the Asante Hene saying, you know what, let's privatize and all of that. But what is the way forward as far as our energy needs are concerned? Joining us for a discussion, we have Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Ben Boakye. In the studio with me, of course, there's Sweetie Abochi, and we'll be handling this together. Mr. Boakye, Memo Boakye,
Major Suben.
Okay.
Pleasure.
There's been a lot to talk about in the energy space. I'm going to give you about a minute and a half. So far, what have your readings been on our power situation? Is it doomsday, by the way?
Oh, certainly, yes. Once you have a deficit that you have to shed load, I mean, there is no other way to describe it than to say there is doomsday. So the summary of all this is that we don't have enough generation at all times to be able to meet the needs of the consumer or the consuming public. So therefore, we have to shed some load to be able to keep the grid sustainable. And that's what has been happening for some time now.
Mm. And so where we are, when you look at the promise that was made us, in fact, the president has touted, even at the last State of the Nation address, that his government had ended doomsday, dealt with the power situation. He says they have managed to keep the lights on for 7 years. I know this is like sounding like a broken record, but really, how did we end here? Just briefly, before we get to substantive issues. How did we end here? How surprised are you that we're here again?
I think the work we do is always to go beyond, the speeches and the promises and look at the challenges in the sector. And we have been sounding the alarm bell for years on how not to manage the power sector, so that we can make it sustainable and ignore the recurrent interjections and political statements about how the power sector is doing well or not. But look at the data. And always when we looked at the data, we saw that there was no promise of a sustainable grid. You had debt being accumulated. You had government, subsidizing the sector with billions of dollars year on year. And you ask yourself, how would government sustain this kind of inefficiency into the long haul? And we didn't see a sustainable path for the power sector. And we've written copiously about poor judgment, poor decisions, poor management of the sector. And we were anticipating that if things never change, we'll get to a point where to crystallize in these challenges that we have. We have had periods where we decided to even borrow to sustain the grid, and borrow to be able to keep the light on, if not pretend to keep the light on. And it's gotten to the point where we don't even have the money to be able to continue that path, and therefore the reality has set in, and we have to shed load.
Let's start now by looking at, even before we get to the Ameri or Kumasi 1 thermal plant, the tussle between the PURC and the ECG. It has led to quite a situation in the media where everyone is talking about whether they are loggerheads and what is happening. But you look at the fining of about 5.8 million Ghana cedis in reference to the board members and the head of the ECG, and then the ECG's responses over time. In this release, for example, dated the 19th of April 2024, they talk about a breach of rules of natural justice. For example, they feel they were not given a fair hearing. They talk about the cash waterfall mechanism, among others. Then there's even more, because the lawyers of the ECG also come in with some additional responses, PURC regulatory order, and then they go on to talk about the allocation of tariff revenues, among others. I'm sure you are well familiar with these. Where do you sit as far as that divide is concerned? Did the ECG get it right? Did the PURC get it right? Or is it that both of them are to blame for where we are currently?
I think there is no divide as far as we are concerned. There is the need, which I think the PURC is picking up, to improve transparency, accountability around the issues at play, and let the public know. It is the Public Utility Regulatory Commission. It's not a private commission. Whatever they do is supposed to be public. In the past, the focus has been more on letting us know how much they're going to charge us for electricity, and not even how much it costs us in real terms to be able to generate electricity, how much shortfalls do we have, what is the real challenges in the sector. And that has eluded us for so long. So it's good to see the PRC pick that up. And picking that up doesn't mean that they are loggerheads with anybody. We need to know, the public need to know, the money that we pay in, what is the result of that money? And even in today's times where people are paying prepaid, you give your money to ECG expecting power. You're not expecting the light to be off because you are prepaid, all right? And that prepayment is a contract. They have to deliver service to you. And yet, having given them that money, you still have to go find another money to look for fuel to be able to run your genset. That is an extra burden on the consumer, and that requires a regulator to be functional and effective in protecting the consumer who is being battered into today's reality. So I don't see any confusion there. I see the need to be transparent. They need to be accountable. And also for the people to know how poorly we are managing the energy sector, which we've been sounding this alarm for so long, and the regulator hasn't picked that up. And now it's become urgent for them to intervene. And I think that is the right thing to do. We know that there is a shortfall. ECG has consistently denied that there is no shortfall. And that for me is extremely disrespectful to the consuming public, to the over 32 million Ghanaians who are expecting power from the utilities, to be treated this way, where the simple fact of the matter is that we are not generating enough. Why is anybody so reckless to think that they can hide that fact and not tell the Ghanaian people that there is a deficit, for which reason we need to shed load?
But the ECG has explained itself, talking about the problem with the transformers, talking about the problem with getting feedback from Gridco, for example, in advance, in order to be able to give proper timelines ahead of time. When you have a window of between 1.5 and 3 hours, it becomes pretty difficult coming out with any timetable, among others. They have made all of these points clear. Is that to say that you feel the PURC is wholly correct and the ECG is wholly wrong?
I think that point is not technically sound. It is the height of, if you like, the disrespect that ECG has for everybody. To say that they don't know that there is, there's going to be a shortfall, it's just not telling us the truth. We do know, everybody in the sector gets information from Gridco on the scenarios every week. I'm sure you would have seen, the system planner every week telling you that we don't have enough fuel. We have X plant under maintenance, and therefore this is the amount of power that will be generated in the week. So it's a simple mathematics. If ECG knows that we're supposed to put 3,600 or 3,700 to the grid, and Gridco is telling you that we can only give you 3,300, do you need a magician to tell you that you have a shortfall, you have a deficit, that you need to share the load? So it cannot be that ECG is not aware that there will be load. But what happens really is that when these alarms have been sounded and the week planner has been given out, ECG will still not progress to shed load. So ECG, Gridco will have to tell you that we're going to take down some load if you don't progress to shed the load. And that's what has been happening. But because Gridco has control over the grid, they can shut down any part of the country at any particular time. So what they do is that when they see 200 megawatt shortfall, they take down a load that is equivalent to the 200 megawatt. If they see 300 megawatt, they take down a load that is equivalent to that. The severity of that kind of approach is that you are not then able to isolate specific installations from the Gridco system, because they do it from the feeders, they do it from the mains or the transmission line, such that if they take down an area, everywhere else in that community goes off. But ECG has the control to isolate specific installation. For example, if Kolebu area has to go down, ECG can take down everywhere else and leave the hospital alone. Gridco cannot do that. They will take down the entire area. So the responsible thing for ECG to do, even if you have 30 minutes alert, is to say that I'm isolating Kolebu and shut down everywhere else around Kolebu. They can do that, but Gridco cannot. So it is not about time. It's about being responsive and responsible to be able to manage the loads like that. It doesn't affect critical installations and everybody alike.
Right, Benjamin. So then, does it also mean that, one, there's a lack of proper communication between the entities, including the VRA among others? But for now, let's focus on the ECG and GRIDCO. And should GRIDCO, two questions. Should GRIDCO not also be bearing...
There is no
Ben, let me complete the question. Should GRIDCO not also be bearing the brunt of part of what we are facing? Because some have said that the PURC has gone soft on GRIDCO and is bashing ECG, but GRIDCO also has its questions to answer.
I don't know what questions they want GRIDCO to answer. GRIDCO is a system manager. They don't generate power, right? They only transmit whatever power is available. So if the power is not available, it's not available. What can GRIDCO do? They only have to tell you that there's no power available. If the generators are able to raise the needed financing to put enough power on the grid, GRIDCO will transmit. And they will not say that there is power we are not transmitting. The bottom line is that there isn't enough generation. And how does a lack of generation or inadequate generation arise? It arises because ECG is not collecting enough revenue. It arises because ECG's collection is abused, it's not transparently utilized, and therefore we don't get enough money to buy fuel. That is the bottom line. We shouldn't run away from those fundamental issues of lack of liquidity, which is occasioned by ECG's inefficiency, to be able to raise enough revenue to give to the generators, to buy fuel and run the generators. That is the basic problem we have. So I don't think there is any confusion anywhere beyond getting enough money to be able to buy fuel to run the system. That's what we have. The transmission lines are there. Once there is power generated, it will be transmitted to ECG, and ECG will distribute. So to have ECG say, we don't know, GRIDCO is undermining us, GRIDCO is not giving us the power, GRIDCO doesn't generate power. They only transmit power. If we give them power to transmit, and they don't transmit, then we can have that conversation.
Ben, are you saying that GRIDCO is completely blameless? Other issues we've seen, especially in hospitals losing electricity unannounced and people losing lives, among others. It means that advertently, GRIDCO shuts down a certain installation to prevent the grid from tripping. But if we are trying to regulate and see a way forward, GRIDCO should take some of the blame. Why is the PURC not questioning them at all and saying that because they've given that weekly schedule or announced, given them provided that there will be a load shedding situation and that they've issued a directive to ECG, why should they not take any blame at all? Because some of the problem is coming from them. They shut down the installation without announcing. So if ECG is failing to announce to consumers that we will be taking off certain parts of, some parts of the network to avoid the grid from tripping, should GRIDCO not be able to inform consumers to avoid some of the situations that we've seen?
GRIDCO doesn't have a contract with the consumer. They don't interface with the consumer. GRIDCO is a transmission company. What they do is that when companies have generated power, they transmit that power to the distributors. So whatever power they have available is what they can transmit.
But they are shutting off some of the installations.
You see, the problem is that ECG is confusing everybody on how this thing happened. If GRIDCO doesn't shut down the some part of the country, when it becomes critical, the entire infrastructure goes down. So there will be a complete shutdown. The systems will respond. So for them not to lose the entire country, they have to pick the feeders. They have to take down anywhere that they think the load will be able, because they know the load from every community, every feeder. So when they take down the load, then it reduces the pressure on the system to keep the system afloat. So ahead of the week, that's what I keep saying, ahead of the week, ECG knows how much power is available. It is not secret in the industry. They have been trying hard to keep that as a secret to the extent that now even GRIDCO workers are politically being manipulated not to put out the data. So when the data is now not being allowed to be shared on how much is being shared on a daily basis, how do you then go back to blame GRIDCO, who is supposed to now give the data to everybody? In fact, it's not even only ECG that knows how much load is being generated. Every generator, call us Sogby, call Car Power, call SunPower, call any generator and ask them, how much power are we generating today? They will be able to tell you on their screen. It's no secret. So ECG just have to pick up the responsibility and say that we know we don't have enough generation. However, the system demand is higher than what we have, and therefore we need to plan to shed the load. And as I keep saying, they are the ones who can isolate the strategic installations. RICO cannot, because they have the feeders, which has to go down to save the grid.
Ben, quick intervention on that point you made. I want to find out from you then. So are you, on these 2 points, do you think the ECG is intentionally not being honest? That is one. And two, do you also think that this lack of honesty, that is, if your answer is yes to question one, then question two, this lack of honesty is tied to the politics of things, especially because there was a lot of talk about Dumso, and now we appear to be in that phase again. What is your take?
I think you've actually answered the question. It's clear lack of candor and honesty on the part of ECG. ECG cannot at any particular time pretend that they don't know how much load there is to shed. They know. And it's really the politics, if you ask me, that let us not communicate load shedding. Even if you know that consistently, recurrently, you don't know how much is going to be shared, but every evening you know that you have to take down, or RICO will tell you that 300 megawatts will go off. You have to plan for it. You know the plans that are on the grid. You know, it's no secret. If a plan is down because they don't have enough fuel, it's no secret. And ECG has to plan for that lack of capacity to be able to distribute enough power in your own distribution system, because you know your strategic customers. For example, there will be a factory that you don't want to go down because they are the ones paying you. You don't want RICO to have that responsibility of shutting down some of the areas when you can then control which industry should be on from the grid, from your distribution system, to be able to save, a feeder going off or going down. So it is just ECG refusing or negligently deciding not to communicate, the load shedding to the populace. And if you look at the release of PRC has told all of us that the claim that transmissions were down is false. The transmission, the distribution infrastructure that were down were less than 10% of what ECG claimed were being fixed all over the place. And even that, when they insisted that they should provide us with the location of all those transformers so that all of us can track. For example, if you know where your transformer is and your light goes off and ECG says the transformer is the one that has a problem, you can just simply walk there to see if you have ECG workers working on that transformer or not. That's the transparency that was required from ECG for us to be sure that their transformers had those problems. But ECG, PRC looked at it and said, no, it is not your transformers. You were not truthful about that problem. And I think we have to, put the situation right where it has to be. If we don't have enough generation, we cannot buy fuel to be able to generate electricity. There is no other way to explain it than to own up to that reality and say that we cannot buy fuel, and therefore let's share the load. And the way to do it is for the distribution company to share the load or the deficit that we have, so that we wouldn't have people dying in the hospital.
So I think we've flogged that horse a lot. But just a quick point before Sweetie Abochi comes in. So is the fine then, the 5.8 million Ghana cedis, is it justified from where you sit? Mind you, legally, and the ECG has alluded to that, you cannot just lift the corporate veil and then look at who is in there. Now you are charging or surcharging members of the board, the head of the ECG, Samuel Dubik and Mahama. And the ECG is saying, you can't do that. You can't impose this fine on individuals. We work in the interest of the company. It is the company, not the individual. Your quick reaction to that. Is the fine justified and the lifting of the corporate veil?
No, I thought it was a good step for us to hold people accountable for their decisions. ECG is saying that the board is not responsible for day-to-day operations of the company. I don't know what they do, because it is their decision that results in the day-to-day operations of the company. For a 1 billion cedi revenue collector, I doubt there can be critical decisions without the board. The board will have several committees that are responsible for specific decisions. And if you look at how ECG is run today, the board members sometimes are even like executive members. They are all over the place. So, I mean, maybe the law court will be the one to guide us on this. But I see how you can isolate the board members from the responsibility of ensuring that ECG is run properly. If they think that Dubik is the one who is responsible and he should be the one to pay for the fines, I mean, PURC will determine that, I think, subsequently, but I don't know whether, the board can be isolated or insulated from responsibility in such a critical state infrastructure with a board that is supposed to take decisions for the management to implement. If the board decided that ECG should be responsible and implement the single account, I doubt that Dubik will go and create 61 accounts, instead of one that has been approved by the board. The board certainly has responsibility. And for me, that decision to hold them accountable was the right one. But we can decide that in court or the processes that would unfold subsequently. But one key thing is that, I don't see how, even if those board members were to pay, I don't see how we're going to sit and be delusional that that money will come from their own pockets. Given the structure and governance architecture of ECG, this is a sole source monster, that has a cash flow of $1 billion every month, and for 5 million to come from that company, there is always going to be a way around it without the individuals paying themselves. And that is my reading.
So beyond this legal tussle and this seemingly political schadenfreude, like the minister wants to say it, we've seen Gridco writing to the Ministry of Energy and saying that it is critical that ECG produces a timetable. What are the expectations of the ministry, and how do we require them to actually step in and bring some sort of normalcy towards them? Because the problem persists. Unless we miraculously find some money to buy fuel to power the available plants, we are going to need to shed load. How do we expect, or what are the expectations of the Ministry of Energy? Because this is their sector.
I think that letter was to tell the minister that in spite of the circular of load shedding, that we're seeing in the space, in spite of the warnings that we keep giving to the sector, which everybody knows, including ECG, they're not being responsible, and therefore we want you to intervene. And that was the crux of this whole letter. So that diffused that assertion that ECG doesn't know how much load is going to be shed and the rest of it, because that data is available. People know how much load will be shed before they are shed. So I don't know whether the minister has been responsible to take up, that conversation with ECG to say, you have to share the load, because the load we know is not available. We don't have enough generation, and therefore let the people know that you're going to take down their power. For example, how can you tell us that there will be no power cut when you don't have crude oil imported or light crude oil imported to be able to run a generation plant? It's unquestionable for anybody to say that we cannot predict that there will be doomsday. When you don't have fuel in the tank for the week, if you don't have fuel in the tank for the week, it tells you clearly that this week you're not going to generate power from XYZ power plant, and therefore you have to shed the load. So to say that Gridco has to tell you an hour before they shed the load, and therefore you don't have enough time to plan, is simply running away from responsibility. And sadly, we haven't still seen political commitment to actually instruct ECG to say that in the face of that reality, that there isn't enough fuel, we are going to shed load, therefore inform the public adequately.
Would you say then that the ECG has failed Ghanaians?
Yes, the entire power system has failed Ghanaians, and the ECG is at the heart of it. And politics is the icing on it, because we've been doing politics with the power sector, which we shouldn't be doing politics with. We have been paying from the budget over time, and now the budget cannot sustain the inefficiency. And that is what has brought us where we are. We have always known that ECG is inefficient. We've always known that they are not collecting enough. We've always known that they were accumulating debt. And that was going to bring us to this point, and that's where we are. So we have not been responsible to hold ECG to account. We're not responsible to get them to do the core job of simply selling power and collecting the revenues, and being able to pay the value chain. So IPPs are not paid adequately. Greco is not paid adequately. VR is not paid adequately, except ECG. When they get the money, they spend it on themselves. And then whatever is left, they give it to the value chain.
I will come to the Ameri power plant, or now the Kumasi 1 thermal power plant. But because of what you've just said, I want to ask then, how do you feel about privatizing energy? And there are the pros and the cons and the different angles to contemplate. But Asante Hene put it out there, talking about local privatization. We have the experience of the PDS. Your take?
No, but imagine a situation where, these directives of PURC were issued to a private company. They dare not say no and disregard that directive to say that issue a timetable, the public to know that there is a deficit. They dare not do that. I mean, can you imagine a bank refusing the directives of the Bank of Ghana? You'll be shut down the next moment. You cannot do that, or they'll take over the bank. So that is the kind of rigor you get when you have a public regulator strengthened to do its job, and then you have the private sector at the beat of the action of the practical distribution of service. So that, for me, it's not a debate at this point. We concluded that way back 2014 and decided that we need the private sector to bring in capital to retool the distribution sector and make it functional, because at the time we were bringing in more and more of the private sector at the generation end. And therefore, you needed a distribution company that could pay, so that it's not a budget that is called upon consistently to do the payment. And unfortunately, that process got curtailed because of the political management of the procurement process for that private company to take up ECG. And the same politics derailed the process, which we had with the PDS situation. The problem was not the private sector participation. The process was that the politicians wanted to take up ECG themselves and pretend to create a private sector vehicle to take up the distribution of power. That was the only problem. If we have to set up a more transparent process and ensure that we have a private company that has the financing and capacity to be able to manage ECG, we would tell a different story than what we did with PDS.
So do you think that relocating this 6 units of the Ameri power plant to Kumasi holds the key to a stable power like we're all looking for? What does it do for us, for this situation?
No, I think we've had some banter with the ministry and agencies in this space on that particular subject. I mean, when the decision to relocate was taken, we thought that we needed to be much more prudent than what we were doing. You had a sector that is accumulating billions of debt every single year. So your mandate or your core action was to fix that problem, to make the sector sustainable before you inject much more recklessness and debt into the space. And some of us were called as anti-Ashanti and didn't want Kumasi to have power plants. And we said, no, we can be much more technical than that. We can be much more professional in our interventions than that. The situation was simply this. You want to move Ameri to Kumasi. At the time, the government wanted to spend about $71 million to do the relocation. They had actually signed a contract with Mytilenius to do the relocation. And we thought that to send $71 million into that project, you could as well strengthen the transmission infrastructure. Because Greco needs the Kumasi, that's Angomaso, to Pokwase transmission line to be able to adequately wheel power, the 330 kV line, and be able to reduce the losses and keep power stable in the Ashanti region for now. So for us, the prudent decision was to do that infrastructure. We need to also build a new transmission line from the west to Kumasi, so that wherever power is located, you are able to wheel that power to Kumasi and the Middle Belt adequately to stabilize power in that enclave. By doing that, you are strengthening the transmission infrastructure. Because if you send the power plant to Kumasi and there is no gas flow, for example, to Kumasi, you will still not be able to, power those power plants. Or if those power plants go down or have a problem, you still have not solved Kumasi's situation. So fix the urgent ones first. And later when you decide that you want to even move all the power plants to Kumasi, you can do that and generate from the middle belt. But the situation that we're in require that we take the most sensitive decisions first. And then you will hear that, GRICO determined in 2014 that we needed some generation in the middle belt to be able to stabilize Kumasi. And we say, hey, that is not technically the solution we need at this point. If you put the fiscals and the technical together, you have to be able to balance your decisions. And in fact, every decision that has gone wrong in the energy sector, you can have a report or a document, and even sometimes a law backing it. So the fact that GRICO recommended some time that we may need a generation in the middle belt doesn't mean that we have to do it without considering any other factor that could be much more reasonable or cheaper for us to do. So we even recommended that instead of running Bui, which is also in the middle belt, and already we have the 330 kV line constructed from Bui to Kumasi, which can also bring on power. What we recommended was that instead of using Bui as a peaking plant, use Bui as a base load. And what that simply means is that you are generating 300, 400 megawatts at peak. That's between 5 and 11 p.m. Use that as a base load and perhaps generate just about 100 megawatts throughout the day so that you were able to stabilize the grid or wheel power more to Kumasi to stabilize the grid from all the other generation centers in the country, and not immediately think of building a power hub, which is also coming at the cost. And if I were to break down that for you, we have constructed a pipeline that GNPC is required to pay over $2 billion for. And that $2 billion has to come through the tariff. And this is the tariff that ECG is not even able to collect at this point. They don't have the systems to be able to collect enough revenue to be able to do that. So you have $2 billion, and now we don't even know how much it has cost us to relocate the power plants to Kumasi. If you add that up to it, you're probably going over a $2 billion plus for that project of relocating 6 units of Ameri to Kumasi. That is not enough to be able to pay for $2 billion. All right?
Are you saying it wasn't worth it?
I mean, you could have built a nuclear plant with that $2 billion. If you had $2 billion to build power plant in Kumasi.
Yes, but answer the question for me. Are you saying then that the relocation was not worth it?
The relocation was not the most sensible decision at the point that we are in, when all that Kumasi wanted was a stable power and not necessarily bringing power plant. Because even as the power plants are there today, you cannot guarantee a stable power supply within that enclave because you don't have enough gas. So now in the short term, what we are seeing is that they are trying to now divert the gas, transmit it to Kumasi so that we can artificially sustain some conversation that, we have brought stable power. But then other, power plants are being denied the gas from the coast to be able to do the same thing. So you haven't actually solved any problem. And remind you also that Ameri power plant is a single cycle plant. So if you deny, say, Asogli, that is a combined cycle, and then give the gas to Ameri, you are not being prudent in your allocation of resources. By dual cycle, a combined cycle plant, what you are saying is that when you have generated power, the exhaust, the heat from the power plant can also be used to couple a steam turbine and be able to generate additional power from it. Ameri cannot do that. So you are using the gas resources to run a simple cycle plant instead of running a combined cycle plant to generate more power to be able to solve the problems that we have at this point. So, but that's the political decision that has been taken. But for us, the technical thing to do was to seek to improve the power system to avert what we are seeing today, rather than injecting much more cost to the sector. And we don't know where that $2 billion is going to come from to be able to pay for the gas transmission infrastructure.
You know what's interesting, Ben? I've heard, not very different from what Ben is saying. I heard Kwabena Donkor saying that the solutions this plant offers is futuristic. But he also mentioned that Gridco owes VRA, and it's due to transmission losses. So in as much as we think this is not the immediate solution we need, in some way it's significant to solving our power crisis. I don't know what you think about that.
Benjamin Boakye has stated it, the significance of it. We could have found other ways. In fact, if we were thinking of the future, there are many other avenues we could have used, and Benjamin Boakye has alluded to some of them. Merely catapulting this plant or 6 arms of it to another place does not necessarily solve the problem.
So
and at what cost? You get it? That's why there is effectiveness and there's efficiency.
Right.
How efficiently are we using money in solving our power crisis? Especially when you owe the IPPs over $1 billion, you have systemic funding problems in there. You want to be as efficient as possible with resources. I don't know whether that is being done.
It's just misappropriation of funds.
Well, it's not technically just the misappropriation of funds, because now you see we can't even get fuel to power our plants. But coming back to Benjamin Boakye briefly, and then Sweetie, you can come in again. So before I pose the next question, I want to find out from you, Benjamin Boakye. Are you then in support of privatization? Give me a straight answer, and then I'll follow up with my question. Are you then in support of privatizing the ECG and maybe other components, like Asante Nene has suggested?
No, I think for the ECG, it has to go to the private sector, and that we can't stress that enough. It's become a political fodder where, because they have the cash flow, the procurements are terrible, the expenditures are horrible, and therefore they keep going there to feed on it. And the way to deal with it is to get the private sector in there. And that's the only way you can even make PURC a relevant institution.
Okay, so
we are struggling at this point to regulate a state entity that has become a monster and not responding to regulation. And the way to do it is to really get the private sector do it and hold them to account, so that we don't need to support. I mean, if you look at how much money we are pushing to the electricity sector through the budget, and it is the public that is paying. Do you know how much levies we are paying? We are paying ESLA, we are paying the Delta, and all of them are not enough, to be able to meet the shortfall. And then we still have to go and borrow to be able to keep the lights on, when all that it takes is for the distributor to distribute the power, lift all that burden so that the money can go to building the roads. The last time we checked, the Ministry of Finance itself had estimated that between 2023 and 2026, they were going to spend over 97 billion cedis to cater for the under-recoveries in the sector. At the same time, the social economic investment that they had to make on education, roads, health, gender and social protection was less than 50 billion. So you are spending far more for under-recoveries of the power sector than what you want to do to improve development in your country.
Right.
And that, for me, is a travesty. We need to fix that.
The Asante Hene focused more on local privatization. What do you think? Local privatization, foreign privatization, or maybe even some sort of joint venture between the public and the private sectors, aka government and maybe some private entity, to ensure that there's balance in ownership? Quick on that. And then to add to that, since you've already spoken about privatization, my problem then is that any privatization of this nature is often laced with corruption. Corruption. Because the same politicians literally sell state assets to themselves. They are behind there somewhere, lurking, and the ownership comes to them. The danger is then that you have individuals now having their hands deeply in state assets, determining what we do, and we end up lining the pockets of individuals. So 2 angles before you get to the corruption bit. Privatization, local, foreign, joint venture. What do you think? 2 questions, and then Sweetie, you can take over.
Yeah, so, I mean, we have not been nervous about who, but again, we agree that you need to have local participation in the space. If that is what everybody agrees, we can go for it. But what is important is that you have to structure it such that those local participants can bring the money. It is money that we need to be able to invest and be able to save Ghana the billions that we are pumping. Let's not kid ourselves, think that, even in the private sector, the local private sector cannot do it and keep the burden on the state. We should just hand it to them and continue to sacrifice development and give it to a local company. We need to be able to find out, do we have the local people who have the financing capacity to be able to invest? What we did with PDS was to just select a few people who show up as Ghanaians and just take up the company without putting forward the needed commitment to invest in ECG to be able to change course. That is not the kind of privatization we are anticipating. What we need is an investment that all of us can run the numbers and say that this is your fair share of benefit that should go to you so that you're not coming to abuse Ghanaians. It's easy to do that in 21st century, to be able to model what the private take should be in this whole arrangement and be able to save the budget from that inefficiency. So it's all about transparency and accountability. And of course, as you say, avoiding the corruption in that process. If we're able to do that, we had recommended that in the past, even to the Ministry of Finance when the PDS transaction did not go through. And we had indicated that even the pension funds could take up the distribution of electricity and invest that money that they are sometimes using for other reckless investments to pick up ECG, bring in some private Ghanaians, set up a consortium that could put forward that investment and be able to take up the utility and manage it well. It's all about making sure that we have the right people and those people will be held to account on how they manage the business.
Now that we are washing our dirty linens in public, I'm wondering how this is affecting us on the power export markets, because we need money and the world can see that we don't have our issues under control. How do you think this is affecting us?
In many ways. We're supposed to be exporting around 300, 350 megawatts of power. And because we have a challenge, we're not exporting power. Sometimes we're doing 50. And even that the president said they shouldn't export. I don't know how that is going, because now everybody has been shut out of the data because they don't want that communicated to you. They don't want that transparency for us to know how much we're exporting, how much we're generating. So we don't have a handle on that data. But the last time I saw the data, we're doing around 70, sometimes 80 megawatt instead of 300 megawatt. And I saw a statement from the Burkinabe system manager, and he was profusely apologizing to his people that they are relying on Ghana to get power to distribute to them, and they don't have control over how much they're going to get every day. And therefore, in the long term, they will have to build their own power plants to be able to avert these kinds of situations. So suddenly we have created the need for Burkina to start planning to be much more sustainable. And that would mean that they're putting up their own power plants to be able to generate power. At the same time, we have Nigeria also aggressively pursuing that market. Nigeria has significant problems with their distribution system, but they have been improving their transmission infrastructure to be able to sell power to the region, because we have the West Africa Power Pool connecting the sub-region. So some private people are picking up the export of power because they're not able to efficiently sell power to the national grid in Nigeria. If they are successful in improving their transmission of power to the region, Ghana will lose that market, because first of all, our power is more expensive. We had the advantage of a stable supply, and therefore Togo, Benin, Burkina preferred Ghana's power. If Nigeria becomes reliable, they are selling sometimes 40% lower than how much we sell to those countries. So on cost basis, we are out. And now also the thinking to build power plants and rely on. So we were supposed to improve, first of all, our transmission and also our cost. But it doesn't look like we're going to be able to improve on our cost in the short term because the inefficiencies are overwhelming. And those are the situations. So we'll probably lose the export market. And in the same way, when we predicted that cocoa was going to suffer, the ministers were saying that, we're not going to lose the cocoa market. And over time, we see what has been happening. So that is what it is. We can't pretend that we have the market and we can abuse it as we want, decide when to sell power and not to sell power.
Benjamin, will Ghana's power crisis end anytime soon from where you sit? I've heard projections from Edward Bauer, Dr. Kwabena, is it Kwabena Donko? I've heard, myriad players talk about the power situation and what we can expect. What do you expect, realistically, in 2024, by close of 2024? What are your expectations on the power crisis we are facing?
No, the power crisis, we see it at two levels. For the consumer and perhaps those who are interested in this subject, you only see the front end of the crisis. That's when the power has gone down. But we are also much involved in the back end of the crisis, where we breed the inefficiency, we breed the subsidies, and sacrifice development for the power sector. We may be able to buy fuel for the optics to be able to address the problem in the short term. But the back-end crisis has been persistent and it continues to grow over time. And that, for me, is the major worry, where we could clean the inefficiencies. For example, this power sector renegotiation that is happening in its opaque form as you can get. From what we are hearing, some of the negotiations are only agreeing with the IPPs to pay them a portion of their revenues, or the amount that is supposed to be paid to them. The power that we are consuming today, we only pay for a portion and do a bullet payment of the outstanding by 2026, 2027, and some 2030. And the question is, who is going to cough up that money to do the bullet payment for the accumulated debt at that point in the future? So we are charting a very unsustainable path for the energy sector. And I think that worries people who understand the back end issue. And that could just mean kicking the can down the lane.
Right. Thank you so much for joining the conversation on this beat. Benjamin Wache, we're extremely grateful that you took the time to join us. Let's also bring in Yaa Jantuah, former Director, Public Affairs at the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. The way you are smiling, are you bringing us light?
Yeah, for this light matter there.
Are you bringing us light? We have light for now, but a lot of the time nowadays, I would come to work and hear brrr, meaning that the lights are out and generators have kicked in.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Fine. You?
Fine.
Let's start from here. You have been in the thick of things with the PURC in the past.
Some time ago, yeah.
Some time ago, yes. And now you see where we are. Even before we get to the PURC and it's fine and everything, where are we now? Are we in Dumso?
Of course, we are in Dumso.
Oh, we are?
Yes.
Sir.
Oh, so can't we feel it? I mean, whether you bring a timetable or you don't bring a timetable, we are feeling it.
The energy minister doesn't agree with you.
Maybe he's briefing from the ECG and this thing, the power players.
I see.
And if Gridco says that ECG should bring a schedule and that we are in Dumso, Gridco sent the letter, you remember?
I do.
Yes, so if the two players are exposing themselves, and PURC too says that there is Zoom, so they should bring a schedule. So then it's clear that
if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck,
yes,
flaps its wings like a duck, then most likely it is a duck.
If it goes off, it's doom. Yes. When it comes back on, it is so. So call it what you may.
It's a
Dr. Matthew Poko Prempe will get you. He says those wishing evil on the country, asking for a timetable.
You see, the point is that, let me say good morning to your viewers. The point is that if there is doom, so it's not evil. If we hadn't in the past used Doomso as a political tool, then I don't think that Doomso happens in countries. In Africa, even in America, when there is some force majeure or there is a storm, yes, there is lights out. People,
and then people know it's a one-off.
Yes,
it's
a one-off. But I mean, whatever it is, doomsday is doomsday, and I think that we should start working towards making sure that it doesn't work. With this, what we have now is more of a capacity problem. It's more of a financial problem than a capacity problem. So if it's a capacity problem, it becomes more difficult to deal with it. But financial, look for the money. Because if ESLA was still sitting, the energy sector levies, if it was still sitting and had not been encumbered to loans that were contracted on the bond market, on the open market, this wouldn't have happened. Because if ESLA was left ajar for it to be used for the purpose for which it was put in place, I don't think we will be going through all this. But unfortunately, that is where it is. And I don't see how the government shouldn't look for money to buy fuel. Most governments which preceded this government, whenever there's a crisis with finances, they find a way to get money from the Ministry of Finance, from government coffers to buy fuel for the utilities.
Now, I'm just curious. When was the last time your lights went out?
Oh, it goes every other day. It's a standard Tuesday evening. So once it's Tuesday evening, I know that by 6 Tuesday evening it's going off. By Saturday it's going. It goes.
So
off.
You have your timetable?
I have created my own timetable.
Oh wow. Basically, you don't even need to write down. You know that. Oh, and then
coming.
Pay attention. Maybe we should also pay attention to the times that they take the power in our areas, so that we can follow through. Because I think that's a smart thing you did there.
In some areas,
that there are,
it is inconsistent. Like you can't plan. And what I have realized, which I keep sharing, is that sometimes when you leave home, that is when they turn the light on.
Yes.
So sometimes you will come back before someone tells you that, six. By which time I have left home.
Your fridge will tell you.
Your fridge will tell you.
Then you go in and you see that, no, my fridge,
it's defrosted, yes.
That is how you see sometimes. Sometimes you don't get to.
Then you know it. So you have it that, they said, your neighbor said they are, so maybe Monday it's off. When Tuesday evening, I know they are going to take it off. Then I get to Saturday morning till the evening, and sometimes you get to Thursday. So I've just decided that, okay, for 3 times in a week consistently, I am seeing some curtailment in my power.
How are you managing? Do you have a generator?
No, I don't. A friend of mine who has a generator yesterday was lamenting that they used to buy one of the jerry can to fill the yellow jerry can, 4 gallon, to fill the machine. Now they are buying 2.
And at a higher cost.
At a higher cost. And by the next morning, it is finished.
Right. So let's get into this legal tussle.
Between
PURC, ECG, Gridco.
It's very straightforward.
It's an open fight.
Yes, right. It shouldn't be a fight. I don't know
they're saying that PRC is operating outside its jurisdiction because it's a creature of statute. The lawyers.
Which lawyers? A creature of which statute?
Okay. How does it all sit with you?
No, the PRC Act is clear. The PRC is an independent regulatory body, which that is not to the direction or control of anybody or thing. So nobody can control the PRC. There are laws.
Not even the president, because in recent times you heard of that engagement where the president is upset that these players are basically washing their dirty linen.
Yes, but it's his fault.
It's the president's fault?
Yes.
It's the president's fault?
I've said it various. It's his fault.
How?
Because you see, if you're a president and you are in that sector, the sector belongs to you. But the law has given you a body that should advise you. So you should be dealing more with that body and your minister. The utilities are subordinate to these 2 entities. And the PRC is there to advise you. For instance, if the VRA says that we need 10 cargoes of crude, I'm using as an example, and you are not too sure, you as the president should call the PRC, do some interrogation for me independently, because the players are in there together. And let us know that truly this is true. Give me an update of the sector. You are not instructing them. But
we don't know the president has not done that.
No, but if
he's not tried to.
So if he has done, why are they fighting?
Right. So the president is to
blame? Yeah. I think that he has to be blamed. Because you see, if you're a president in the sector in Ghana, and that sector is a very important sector, it is the fulcrum around which everything revolves. Trade, investment, our personal life, social life, everything is electricity. And the other petroleum. Electricity is the fulcrum. I mean, everything, LPG, everything is around energy. Let me say energy, our lives.
Okay.
So if you have a regulator in there that regulates the most critical part of the energy sector, being electricity, you need to be talking to them more, not as instructing them, but seeking their views on matters. Because you are not an expert. Your minister is a politician. Your utility.
Because Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh is not, no, his expertise is not.
It's not that he's a medical
energy.
doctor.
Exactly.
Yes. He can learn, but that is not your expertise. The utilities want to keep their job, so they might even pad stories or pad evidence, whatever it is. So it is the regulator that is independent, that has data, that does all the investigation, independent investigation. So you should be dealing with the regulator, not as in instructing the regulator, but as in getting advice. Which way do we go? Where do we stand? What is the outlook like? So you should be having a lot of information from the regulator.
So just a final bit. So it means the PRC is not to blame?
For what?
In all of this? Because some have said that, the ECG has said that, look, you are overstepping your
that one they
bounds.
Are not.
Just hold for me. You're overstepping your bounds. You are not even being fair to us. You didn't really engage as breach of natural justice. And they have said that they are not going to.
Okay, then the laws are there.
So they are saying that you can't do this. You are lifting the corporate veil. You know what the company law and others say. You are lifting the corporate veil and addressing individuals in there. We work for ECG. How can you do that? I mean, I'm just making
who is ECG?
The claim that they have made.
Today, they take board members off, take workers off. The ECG is what? Is a whole. It's a container that is not filled. The container ECG is filled with people who work in various aspects of
but the technicalities of the law are specific. But lifting the corporate veil when instances where you can do that.
But they also have a law. Everybody should go and read the 2413. They can impose fines.
Okay. So let's take the issues one at a time. The first issue is that the PRC only requested documents. It didn't actually make any charge against them. And they submitted some of these documents. They should have come to them, make an appeal, giving them a fair hearing. The next thing they saw was that they slapped them. They slapped a fine
No, it's
them.
not like that.
And it was even more than regulated according. They were supposed to be not more than 500 penal units.
Where is that? Because whatever
they've quoted all that in their response to the ECG.
We should go. But having read the 2413.
Okay, so should they have been given a fair hearing
who said
before the
they
charge?
didn't give them a fair hearing.
Did they?
They asked them. You see, when the regulator writes to you, the first thing you do is to write back. They didn't even mind them. They didn't even send anything to them.
They sent some documents.
Which documents?
Like the 31 bank accounts out of the 61, the 36 out of 61. The documents for cash water mechanism.
You see, that is cash.
Payments to that. They also submitted the directives from government for the purchase of fuel. So there are some of these orders that
those things were not very key. They said, one, give me the location of the transformers that you say is causing load shedding. We noticed that you have not given announcements. 65% of your planned maintenance, you didn't announce it. It is a prerequisite that you announce it in the media, in the area. You announce it on radio, TV, newspaper. Then you also, and that is planned. If they have noticed that we need a load shedding schedule according to ABC, did they respond to those things? They didn't. And besides, they were in the media, talking to media, when the regulator was waiting for them to come and respond to them. When these things happen, you just go to the regulator and have a meeting and tell the regulator your challenge. But if you don't tell the regulator your challenge, they will use the law. I don't think that PRC is outside the law.
Should all this be, doing it in public like this? Is this the way to? I mean, the approach of the PRC has come to question.
Who questioned it?
I've heard some energy. Yesterday I was listening to Newsfile and it said, as an arbiter, they could have done all this behind closed doors and then come out with a solution.
People are just misusing words and changing the role of the PRC. The PRC is a policeman.
It's a policeman?
Yes, they are not an arbiter.
Okay.
Nobody should say the PRC, they are in the same sector. PRC also regulates water.
Okay.
PRC is not an arbiter. What is an arbiter? The only way PRC becomes an arbiter is when there's an issue between the consumer and the utility service provider.
Is that not what we're seeing?
No, but this one, it is you are flouting regulatory sanctions.
Right.
Regulatory orders. You are flouting it.
What's the way forward? As we start,
the way forward is that ECG should accept that there is a regulator and come to them for them to sit down. We've seen this so many times because you see, I promise ECG they will not win this battle.
You promise the ECG?
Yes, because I've seen it before. Even if the president intervenes, what the regulator would then do is that next time you are coming for tariff, they won't give you.
So they will show you something.
I'm telling you, I've worked there. I mean, now I've left, I can say some of the tricks. They won't say anything.
You do me, I do you.
But the next time you come, because you see there's a benchmark for how the regulator should act. And everybody is watching. The World Bank and others, they have a benchmark. So when I was in PURC, they rated us the best regulator in Africa. Because they said that we were able to ensure that our rules work. They even brought people from Ivory Coast to come and learn from us.
Speaking of which, how do you feel Dr. Ishmael Aka and others have? I mean, how do you feel the outfit has fared?
No, initially, I mean, for this one, I'm very happy that they are now finding their voice. I want it to continue. As a person in the sector, if they had done it before, maybe we would not be where we are.
So the PURC could have been more proactive.
More proactive than this. Because you see, you should let the utility know that you are there. You should let the utility understand that you are there to regulate the sector, both water, electricity, and natural gas transmission. So you cannot, the utility cannot just get up and say, oh, you are an arbiter. Oh, no. The name they are giving to the PURC is not the best. It's people don't know what the regulator does. The regulator.
No, I agree with you on that point.
Yes.
They don't
understand it.
Arbitrate.
Yeah, they don't arbitrate.
I think the term you used is fitting. They are police officers. For the sector.
For the sector.
Yeah.
So even if you have an issue with a consumer, and maybe the consumer has lost an equipment, has lost something, the PURC, the word is that we order the utility to pay back or compensate the consumer. There's nothing like arbitration. They are not fighting. No. The regulator is telling them that I am the regulator. Do what I want you to do. But if for any reason you are unable to do it, come to me. But if you sit in the media and you are fighting and throwing muscle, it will not work. Because I'm saying that you cannot charge your own tariff. And the way our cedi and dollar is going, at a point you need a shore up.
Which we have needed.
Yes.
Which the finance ministry has failed to take.
I am even surprised that there's 200 million of the cash, waterfall mechanism is with the Ministry of Finance. That money is supposed to come straight to ECG and ECG will distribute. How did 200 million end up in the coffers of the Ministry of Finance? So these are some of the things that if you're a regulator, even you raise a red flag before anything happens, you raise a red flag.
And Suti, it also goes back to some of the debts. You know, the power sector is a convoluted mess.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you say, oh, this entity owes that entity, but government owes this entity, and
so
in the case,
cost, yes.
DRA, grid code. It's a complex mess. Where do we start solving that problem?
The ESLA was supposed to solve that problem. ESLA. And there was also, I think, a 1 peso grid stabilization tariff or something like in the tariff. which 1%, which was used for Gridco to stabilize the system so that they don't, because it's new, Gridco was unbundled from VRA, so they need to change certain things. And that one was used to reduce the tariff, 20%. So that revenue was lost. So once the revenue was lost, then certainly that there will be a gaping hole in the finances. And now the mechanism that was bringing the money has been encumbered to a loan, meaning that whatever proceeds that comes into the ESLA fund, which has been extended for 30 years, is being used to pay a loan. So now the sector is left as it is.
Yeah. And government can't help because their hands are tied.
Tied where?
Because of the 0% tolerance on subsidy, the IMF program, if I'm right.
What does the subsidy go to?
You can only spend what you generate. So the government, that's why they also remove the price stabilization on fuel and all that. So they cannot help.
Why are we living in the IMF? They have mismanaged the economy.
Right. Yes, I wanted to read out the regulations as stated, so that not that one specifically. One? The Consumer Regulations 2020, the LI 2413. 2413. Okay, right. Because you were saying that it is a police officer. Yeah. The PRC is a police officer. But just for clarity, it doesn't and then we can wrap it up.
It doesn't state that it's a police officer.
No, I want to speak to finding the directors instead of ECG. And
but
saying
who
that
is ECG?
ECG is a company.
Please,
a limited.
Please, I beg you. At the core of decision making is the board. The MD takes instructions from the board. There's no way the MD. For me, the MD should not even be brought into this thing. There is no.
Samuel the big man.
Yes, because you see, he cannot do things on his own. He works under instructions from the minister and from the board. Largely, his link is to the board. So when they go for board meetings, they say, let's do A, B, C, D. The lawyers were saying that the ECG board do strategic things. Okay. What kind of strategy do they do, apart from strategy around power? Strategy around electricity. And what we are talking about is around electricity. So they are able to tell the MD, go and do A, B, C, D, E. Then he will, with his management team, will say that when we went to the board meeting, this is what the board said we should do. So if the board says that no load shedding schedule, Dubi cannot come on his own to say that there should be a load shedding schedule. The load shedding schedule, when I was in PURC, load shedding schedule issued with maintenance, when it is planned, it is even brought to the PURC for us to interrogate it. And it is the board that decides. So you think that Akkad doesn't know what he's doing? They know, they've looked at everything and see that, and we don't even know what information is there that cannot come out. Because for them to say that they are charging the board directly, you don't know what is there. We cannot speculate. But I'm saying that who is responsible for the day-to-day, the decision-making process? So if the board is not responsible for decision-making processes, then they should let them go and leave it to work.
My final question to you, how far does this fight go? Because now it looks like PLC is fighting on behalf of consumers with electricity. Yes. And they're also fighting back. How far does this go?
Then it means that ECG does not love consumers. The consumers that have a contract and an arrangement with them to provide power, they don't love us. They don't regard us. Do you get me? PURC right now is protecting the interests of the consumer as indicated in Act 538. Okay. That is the law. But if they are fighting back, it means they don't love us. Because they don't know how uncomfortable it is for us to go through DUMSO. The only thing is that MPP used this DUMSO for politics from 2014 to 2016. That was their key political message. So now they are even afraid to come and admit that there is DUMSO. So they say it is DUMCA and all that. That is what the problem is. Because seriously, I don't see anything wrong with a nation going through this kind of crisis. There is nothing wrong. You can go through this kind of crisis, my brother. There is nothing wrong. You just come out and say that ABC, this is what is going on. Let's see how we can resolve the matter.
All right. Thank you so much. for joining us for this conversation. Red, do you have any final words before we go?
I saw him right in Mary.
That's fine. I was going to go there, but we've run out of time. Unless you want to, in less than a minute, take a look at that.
But Mary, what is wrong with Mary being in Ashanti region? There's nothing wrong with the renaming because it has been decommissioned. It's now in the hands of VRA. And I mean, you know, there's a plant at Tema, which was for the Norwegians. They renamed it to KTPP1 or something like that. Boom. There's also the TICO in Takrady. They renamed that one because now it is a BOT, built, operate, and transfer. I mean, they decommissioned in 2020 because they owed America 57 million and VRA couldn't pay because ECG hadn't collected enough. Now they have paid. They have decided that this is it. If it's in Kumasi and Ashanti region, it's good because when there's a system collapse, immediately Ashanti goes off because Ashanti has the AFLS, the automatic frequency load shedding mechanism. It's placed in Ashanti region. So whenever there's a system disturbance on the lines, Ashanti is the first place that goes off.
Right. That's a conversation we're going to expand on. And Yaa Jantuah, we are very grateful for your time. In the past, she has spoken for the PRC and she's laid bare a number of issues. We are so grateful that you took the time to join us this morning. We'll be right back after the break talking about Ghana's finances, where we find ourselves, bilateral creditors and all moving forward. Our very own George Riafe is out and about. Outside of the country, of course, with some of these engagements. We'll be getting him on the line to break down what is happening as far as the IMF, among others, are concerned. Stay. Or no deal? Well, that is the case for Ghana as far as the bilateral creditors are concerned. And more, now the third tranche of release from the IMF is facing some obstacles because there are roadmaps, there are milestones we have to attain before getting that. But are we getting there? Well, joining us all the way from Washington's District of Columbia, we have George Riafe, who is with our business team. He's going to walk us through what the talks have been like so far as the IMF is concerned. George, hello, good morning. You'd have to unmute, George.
Is it better now?
It is better. I can hear you.
Thank you so much that you can hear me loud and clear. But let me first start with some background. So when the IMF came to town for what they will call the second review, at the staff level, they said that Ghana has been able to complete the second review. Now, the staff, when they complete the second review on ground with the country that has signed the program, they need to take that report to their management, and from the management, they go to the board. Now, if the board is satisfied with how the country has performed under the program, then they will pass that program. And since Ghana's program comes with financial support, they will go ahead and then extend that second tranche of funds to Ghana. It's around $360 million. Now, this is the catch word here. When the IMF came to town and give us all this update, they said that, listen, before they can go to the board, they need Ghana's bilateral creditors, those and also those multilateral institutions to say that they've reached a deal. Now, don't forget that in January, before they had to disperse the funds to Ghana, the terms for restructuring, they're about $5.4 billion. They agreed in more of an agreement in principle that we are okay. We are okay in beginning talks with country Ghana and how to restructure their debt. So moving on from the agreement in principle, they were supposed to finalize a memorandum of understanding that the fund would need before the staff can go to its board for a meeting on country Ghana. Before even the IMF came out here in DC to give us some details, we had picked up information from the Official Creditor Committee, giving us some indication that they have been able to reach some favorable deal with Ghana in terms of the terms and the wording of the statement, and we put that then out. Initially, the fund came out and said, well, we are not aware of all those things. Now, fast track, at that Africa bosses, that is Abiy Selassie's press conference, he gave an indication that as far as he is concerned, they've not received any email from the official creditor committee saying that a deal has been reached, but they have received financing assurance from the official creditor committee. And even without an agreement on MOU, they would go ahead to extend that financial support to Ghana, that is, go to the board. Because one critical thing that these things take quite a long time. And even trying to schedule a board meeting on Ghana is not easy. So when you get that indication that some progress is being made, you also on the fund level, you want to start the process, hoping that by the time you complete the staff report on Ghana, share with management, share with all the individual board members, and hoping that they meet on Ghana, that final deal would have come through. But the fund is even telling us that even though there isn't a final agreement where Ghana has signed, the bilateral creditors have signed, because they've gotten this financing insurance from the official creditor committee, they are going ahead. Government held the press conference yesterday here in DC. The minister said that as far as you're concerned, that draft agreement on the fine terms, the wording, that shows that these bilateral creditors have agreed to the terms for restructuring the $5.4 billion that Ghana owes these countries, is actually done. And so they are now sharing that document with the members of the official creditor committee for them to state that even the word something like is that, financial year, every member has to agree to that. Now, if that is done, and they share that with Ghana, because they had initially agreed to those fine details and terms, it would just take like 2 days or 3 days for Ghana to say, okay, we're okay. And that could mean that an agreement has been reached. Now, again, the Minister of Finance claims that if all other things being equal, they are expecting that to happen in the coming days. And then they can send that MOU to the IMF. And the IMF now will have everything in place to go to its board and then get this second review approved for this money to come. Some will say that why is so much big deal about this? It is not just about the money, because for some of these bilateral creditors who are financing some project in Ghana, they need this agreement to be finalized ASAP for them to know their weak leg going forward, that indeed Ghana is now committed to servicing their debts owed them. Don't forget that, this G20 common framework that Ghana is under because it was able to engage with these official creditors, that debt suspension initiative that allowed Ghana to suspend payment of debt to these donor partners is going to end this year. So they need some clarity on the terms in settling their debt before they start financing those projects in Ghana, raising those monies to Ghana. And that's why for some people, it is a big deal that this is done ASAP. So based on what the Minister of Finance is telling us now, it appears that virtually it might be a done deal, because what goes into the drafting and even agreeing the terms is the major hurdle. And if they have crossed it now, then the economists will say, all other things being equal, the IMF is set to go to its board, get the second program reviewed or approved, and we'll get that much talked about $360 million.
So basically, George, what you're saying is, just a week ago, we heard the IMF boss, Kristalina Georgieva, basically suggesting that the staff level agreement was not enough to release the third tranche. You're saying that inroads have been made based also on the communications we're getting, though there's no fine print to commit that. The board hasn't yet given its directive on this, but inroads have been made, and now we're practically on the cusp of securing some agreement from the different parties, our bilateral creditors, and that in the coming days, we can expect that the IMF board will approve the third tranche. Is that what you're saying?
With respect to the board approving Ghana's program, what the IMF staff is working is that all other things being equal, somewhere in June, because these reports, it has even legal implications. When they are even done, their legal department needs to even review all these reports. And these things take time. There can even be an instance where they are done with everything. A board member says that they are not done reviewing Ghana's program. The build meeting schedule wouldn't come on. So it's a process. And if you judge by past events, and even for the Africa boards to say that they have secured the financing assurance, if there was no fine print in place in terms of the draft deal, the IMF couldn't have told us that they have secured the financing agreement for them to even go out of the process. So all other things being equal, holding all these parameters constant, the board is likely to meet in June this year. And judging from what the finance minister had said, it means that we are likely to get our second review passed by the IMF board and get the next tranche coming in, because even the fund is saying that even though as at now, there hasn't been an official communication to them with respect to the final MOU, the fine print, the wording being agreed, because they have secured that financing assurance from the official creditor committee, they are kicking start that work of finalizing Ghana's report, which sometimes can take weeks. The management group can take weeks. And therefore, if we hold all these things constant, possibly in June, the board can meet on Ghana to pass our second review.
George Rafe, thank you very much, and we'll stay with you as and when you have more information. We're hoping to get the scoop from you. That is George Rafe. He's an editor with Joy Business. So that is the situation. That is where we are currently. How will things pan out? Only time will tell. But stay with us just a little bit more. We're going to give you our photo of the day and then draw the curtains on the show. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Here we are. Sweetie Abochi has joined me in the studio, and it's all about the photo of the day for today. We'll share our thoughts on it, but enjoy for now. What do you think is happening there?
My immediate thoughts.
In fact, there he is. There he is.
My immediate thoughts were, Mama need a shoe, Mama need a house, something, something. What you gonna do?
Yeah.
Hustle. Hard. That's it. Chale.
So that's his, the bag he's wielding. The bag has become his pillow. His jacket or something has become his sleeping cloth. He's taken his shoes off, Chale.
These are his life. These shoes.
Into the socks, and the issue, and the shoes are. But Charlie, if I had to caption this, do you know what I would say? Mantaya.
Oh, I would have said hustle is real. But this is the life of lots of people on the streets of Accra. I don't know about other parts of the country, but this is so common, especially at night, at dawn, when you're coming into town. Anyway, that's a photo of the day. I hope
La Hasulo. Yes, I love.
Oyoga.
Watawashika. Jenabu.
Okay.
But we're not going to do
that. Thank you so much for staying with us for 4 hours straight.
Yep.
We absolutely love you and appreciate you. And I want to say a big thank you to Akosia Kanga for this beautiful dress I'm wearing. And Benjamin has a new suit. Who this?
It's not new. It's not new. I just bring it out once in a while. It's not new.
It suits you. Your suit suits you.
My suit suits you.
Yeah.
Nice play on words.
Okay.
We love you. Stay here. Stay right here. We are your home of independent, credible, and fearless journalism. And up next, we'll be serving you independent, fearless, and credible news, right? Joy News Desk is up next. We love you.
I'm Benjamin Akakpo.
And I am Christiana Sweetie Abochi. We love you. Do stay for the news up next. And we'll catch you same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.